Chapter 12:10. When Fenglin got out of the taxi and stood at the majestic and elegant entrance, his face was full of emotion. Rui Art Association. There was a gathering every 3 years, and the time of the gathering wasn't fixed. This time, when Fenglin had received a last-minute notice and had come to Fujian to attend to Ming's matter. The moment he got out of the taxi, he saw a few luxury cars stopping in the distance. Compared to them, his style seemed a little shabby. When Fenglin didn't mind, he carried his bag and walked up. Among the people who got out of the luxury cars, there were people about his age. There were also people from Ming and Yu Lily's generation. There were quite a number of them. It looked like the scale of the event this time was much larger than the one he had attended 9 years ago. When Fenglin swaggered in, and quite a few people recognized him, a young man walked up. When he saw Fenglin, his eyes were filled with surprise. He asked, "Are you Senior Fenglin?" When Fenglin looked at the young man and realized that his face was somewhat familiar. For a moment, he couldn't place him. He smiled and nodded his head. "That's me. Hello. My name is Zhenli. My father often mentions you to me." "And your father is?" "Zhen Xianlang." When he heard the name, Fenglin immediately understood. He laughed heartily and shook hands with him. "I didn't expect his son to be so big already. You must be 25 this year, right?" Zhenli was a little embarrassed. He shook his head and asked, "Do I look that old?" When he heard that, Fenglin found it a little strange and asked, "Did I remember wrongly?" I'm 21 this year. After the new year, I'll be 22. Let's go, Senior one. This way, please." This time, it was Fenglin's turn to be embarrassed. He smiled and nodded his head. There were quite a number of people who recognized Fenglin. After all, the name of the wandering artist was too well known. As the associate director of the art association, Zhen Xianlang had been inside for a long time. When he heard others mention Fenglin, he was surprised and quickly came forward. After more than a decade, Zhen Xianlang looked very different from before. When they were young, both of them were handsome and dignified. After not seeing each other for so many years, the two of them had become more and more casual. Zhen Xianlang had a crew cut. His hair was short and black, just like when he was young. He was tall and strong and looked very healthy. His eyes were big and brimming with energy. His facial features looked well-defined, but there were obvious wrinkles on his face. When Fenglin saw Zhen Xianlang, he felt a sense of familiarity. When Zhen Xianlang saw Fenglin, the joy in his heart overflowed onto his face. He went forward and gave his good friend, whom he hadn't seen for many years, a big hug. "It's been a long time, brother." Fenglin chuckled and patted him on the shoulder. "That's right. I didn't expect you to have a second child. I thought you'd never get married." When Zhen Xianlang heard this, the smile on his face froze slightly. Seeing that something was wrong, Zhenli quickly said, "Dad, it's time to eat. Let's go inside." "Yes, let's go inside." Chapter 12:11. Brothers in the past, love rivals in the past, old friends now, and memories now. In the end, he was still an outstanding young man. With a family like the Zhen family, how could he possibly remain unmarried for the sake of a woman? Fenglin had already expected this, but he couldn't help but feel disappointed. You chose the wrong person. Yu Lily had arranged for Ming to stay so far away from the hotel because she didn't want Xin Julia to know. Now, that Xin Julia knew, and Yu Qian also knew that the friend she was talking about was Ming. Yu Lily brought Ming to the hotel she was staying at. There was a large shopping mall near the hotel. Yu Lily brought Ming there to buy a few changes of clothes before she checked into a room with him. When they returned to the hotel, they realized that old Mrs. Shun and Yi Qian hadn't returned yet. Regardless of whether they called Xin Julia or Yu Lily, the result was the same. It was normal for one person to be like that, but if both of them were like that, then something wasn't right. Yu Lily and Xin Julia were a little worried. Yu Lily said, "Why don't we go look for them together? It can't be that both of their phones ran out of battery, right? If it was really just that their phones ran out of battery, then everything would be fine. But what if it was a very scary thing to think about?" Xin Julia was even more afraid. "I'll go look for them. Wait for me. I'll bring Ming to the room, and then we can go together." After Yu Lily said that, Ming's grip on her hand tightened. Xin Julia looked at Oming. He was a little reluctant, but it wasn't good to leave him alone. After thinking about it, he said, "Forget it. You'd better stay here. If I can't find them, then you can come with me to look for them." Yulili looked down at Oming, who was holding her hand tightly, and nodded her head. "All right, be careful." After Julia left, Oming's whole body relaxed. Yulili clearly noticed the subtle changes in him. She was a little amused. She took the key card and took him to find a room. After entering, Oming didn't want to let go and said, "I haven't showered in a few days, and I'm not wearing proper shoes. I'm so dirty." His meaning couldn't be clearer. He just wanted Yulili to help him bathe. Yulili pretended not to understand. She threw the clothes she had just bought for him onto the hotel bed. She opened the package of the men's boxers and threw it to him. Then she found a bathrobe for him and said, "Go take a shower. My hand is burned." "Look." Oming stretched out his hand and said, "It hurts. It's burning. I think it'll hurt even more if I touch hot water." Indeed, there were blisters. Yulili pulled his hand over and felt the pain just by looking at it. "Uncle once said he would come and pick me up after he's done with his work, but I haven't heard from him yet. By the time he comes to help me bathe, I'm sure I'll be stinking." When Yulili heard that, she looked up and asked, "Have you contacted Uncle One?" "Yes. He seems to be very busy recently." "Yes." Uncle One had repeatedly reminded her to take good care of Oming. Oming didn't look like he was being taken care of at all. Chapter 12:12. When Oming heard that, he smiled and nodded his head. "Okay." Yulili took off her coat first. She was wearing a thin white long shirt and a pair of tight black leggings. She unbuttoned her cufflinks and rolled up her sleeves. She took off Julia's coat and said, "Take off your clothes first." "Okay." Oming was very cooperative. After Yulili unbuttoned his shirt, he followed her into the bathroom. They had known each other for 7 or 8 years. Even if she saw him naked, Yulili wouldn't be too shy. After all, she was already used to it. But her current identity, it was a little awkward. Taking a deep breath, Yulili walked in to fill the bathtub with water, but she found that the room didn't even have a bathtub. "How do I wash it? A shower?" "Oming, there's no bathtub. Why don't you go to my room to wash? I've already taken off my clothes. It's so troublesome to put them back on. Let's do it this way. What if the water splashes your hands? I won't get wet if I'm careful." Oming didn't care. He walked forward, opened his arms, and said, "Come on, let's finish this quickly." Indeed, it was too inconvenient for Oming to put on clothes with his hands. Yulili couldn't be bothered. She turned on the shower head and tested the temperature. After confirming that the temperature was suitable, she let Oming hold the shower head. Yulili took off his clothes quickly and helped him wash his hair. But Oming was too tall. Yulili couldn't reach him at all. She reached out and pressed his shoulder. "Squat down." "Okay." Oming was very obedient. He was so obedient that even Yulili felt a little surprised. After washing his hair, Yulili stuffed the shower head into his hand and grabbed a towel to help him dry his hair. Unexpectedly, Oming held the shower head and sprayed it on Yulili's body as if he didn't have eyes. Yulili exclaimed and took a step back, but it was too late. Most of her body was already wet. "Did you get wet?" Oming seemed to realize something and stood up apologetically. "I can't see." Oming's attitude was so sincere that Yulili couldn't get angry. She sighed, dried his hair, and said, "It doesn't matter. It has to be washed anyway." "Then, shall we shower together?" As he spoke, he turned the shower head to the side and poured water over Yulili's body. Yulili swallowed all the words that were on the tip of her tongue. "Forget it. He can't see anyway. Let's bathe together. It's not like we haven't bathed together before. It'll be fine after I send him to bed later." She stood on her tiptoes to help him dry his hair. Yulili didn't notice the distance between them. As for Oming, he could clearly smell the fragrance that belonged solely to her. Looking down, Yulili was soaked. Her thin white shirt stuck to her body, outlining her exquisite and well-proportioned figure. The neckline was slightly open, and the seductive snow-white skin was overflowing with seductive fragrance. The white bra was clearly outlined, and the plump peach that was wrapped in it was ready to come out. It made one's blood boil. Chapter 12:13. Hearing this, Ming came back to his senses. He touched his nose and said blankly, "I have a nosebleed." Lily was frightened. She stood on her tiptoes and reached out to touch his forehead. Then she touched his face and asked, "Were you feeling unwell? Quick, I'll help you get dressed. Let's go to the hospital." Lily was scared out of her wits. No, I feel uncomfortable." Ming touched his nose and then poured the shower head on his nose. Lily was stunned. She seemed to think of something and subconsciously lowered her head. Ming was shocked. He quickly pulled her and said, "I'm fine. Let's continue." "Are you sure?" Lily reached out and touched his face, and then touched her own face, but she couldn't feel anything. She patted him on the shoulder and said, "Squat down a little." When Ming heard that, he bent his legs. Lily put her forehead close to his, trying to feel his temperature. However, it didn't seem to make much difference. If he didn't have a fever, why would he have a nosebleed? Before Lily could figure out, Ming moved his lips forward and kissed her lips accurately. Lily was stunned. Before she could react, Ming held her in his arms and stood up straight. Lily was held by his waist, so she was unprepared to be pulled up. She subconsciously stood on her tiptoes. Ming gently pushed her against the glass door of the bathroom. His lips kissed her lips, and his movements were hot and eager. Lily was firmly suppressed and couldn't say anything. She stared at him and pushed him, and her body struggled. The shower head was thrown to the ground, and the water kept splashing up, drenching them both. The temperature climbed inch by inch. Ming's thigh pressed her against the wall, and his hot big palm was strong on her body, from the waistline to the bra. Lily struggled more fiercely. However, unintentionally, her thigh clearly touched a hot and hard spot. At that moment, Lily finally understood the reason. What a beast! He's blind, but he's still in heat. She opened her mouth angrily and bit down hard on his tongue. Ming was caught off guard. His tongue was bitten, and he released her out of habit. "Pervert!" Lily spat and reached out to push him. "You're so troublesome just to take a bath. Don't expect me to help you bathe in the future." Ming covered his mouth and cried out, "It hurts." As he spoke, he loosened his grip, revealing the bright red blood on his palm. Lily glanced at him, but then she seemed to think of something and stared into his eyes. Ming frowned and refused to look at Lily. Lily felt even more strange. She stretched out her finger and waved it in front of his face as she asked, "Can you see?" Otherwise, why would he have a nosebleed for no reason? Otherwise, why would he have such a huge reaction? When Ming heard this, his heart skipped a beat. He neither shook his head nor nodded. His eyes were unfocused as he stared blankly ahead and asked, "Do you care so much about this matter?" His words were filled with hurt. When Lily saw this, she quickly waved her hands and explained, "No, I just feel strange." "How can you have such a big reaction when you can't see?" Chapter 12:14. Lily's face heated up when she heard that. Ming stepped forward again and said, "I think of the time when you and I were together. When we were in the bathroom having fun, that feeling, it was really great." Lily's face heated up even more. Looking at Ming's approaching face, she pushed him away and yelled, "You pervert! Are you going to take a shower or not?" "Yes." Ming leaned over and said in a low voice, "Didn't we say we'd shower together?" With that, he caressed Lily and whispered, "Let's shower together." Lily slapped his hand away, but Ming's hand seemed to be fixed there. The familiar and unfamiliar feeling made Lily blush even more. She felt a little uncomfortable talking. She pushed him away and said, "I'll help you shower first. Get out of my way. I'll go get the shower gel. Let's do it together. I'll help you take it off." With that, Ming's hand fumbled with her buttons. His large palm brushed against her skin through her clothes, causing Lily to tremble sensitively. "Your hand." Lily looked down and saw the blisters on his hand. "Doesn't it hurt?" "It hurts." Ming lowered his hand and said, "If it hurts, you don't have to use your hand." With that, he squatted down and lowered his head to feel it inch by inch. His warm breath fell on her skin, and Lily felt her body tense up. The throbbing feeling spread from the skin that he had touched to the rest of her body. Ming lowered his head and bit her button. She didn't know if it was intentional or not, but his teeth always grazed her skin. It didn't hurt, but it brought about a different kind of wonderful feeling. Lily's breathing slowly became rapid, but she quickly regained her senses. She pushed his head away and said righteously, "Oh Ming, I only listened to Uncle One and took care of you for the time being. Don't think too much about it. I have no intention of getting back together with you." "But I do." Oh Ming leaned forward again and whispered, "I want to get back together with you. I want to be with you. I want to marry you. I want to have children with you." It's the same words again. When Lily heard that, she no longer found it romantic. Hearing that, he snorted coldly and said, "Saying the same thing once will have an effect, but saying it again and again and then standing you up. Is it fun?" "I'm serious, Lily. Really, I'm serious. The Civil Affairs Bureau is open tomorrow. Let's go back and get our marriage certificate, okay?" Oh Ming hugged her with one arm and whispered in her ear, "Enough." Lily pushed him hard and snorted, "Do you think I will still believe you? How many times have you said the same thing? You can secretly count it yourself." Oh Ming felt a pang of pain in his heart. Lily's reaction was both unexpected and within his expectations. Fortunately, he had yet to reveal his final trump card. Oh Ming took a step forward and said, It's my fault. I'm sorry. I didn't believe you. I'm blind and disabled, so I feel inferior. I didn't want to hold you back, so I said those things to you." Chapter 12:15. Such self-ridiculing words fell into Oh Ming's ears and made him feel even more uncomfortable. The woman in front of him clearly had reddened eyes and was on the verge of collapsing with tears, but her voice didn't reveal anything at all. If he really couldn't see, he would definitely be deceived by her. But he could see, and he saw everything. This woman has always been so stubborn. It's not shameful to show weakness occasionally. Can't she show weakness a little? Oh Ming's heart was stuffy and painful. He lowered his eyes and still did not dare to look up. He whispered, "I know I have done a lot of wrong things. Give me another chance, okay? I should say this to you." Lily held his face in her hands and finally couldn't help it. Her voice was a little choked. Tears fell uncontrollably. Lily quickly raised her head and held back her tears. After taking a few deep breaths, she said, "Give me a chance to choose, Oh Ming. I don't want to be with you anymore." He always asked her to give him a chance, and she gave him one. But every time, it would only result in deeper humiliation. Every time, I will deal with my mother. We won't go home in the future. We will live outside, so you won't meet my mother. Oh Ming reached out and pulled Lily's hand. "Let's go back to Kingstown tomorrow. We will go to the Civil Affairs Bureau, get married. Oh Ming, you are always like this." Lily shook him off. "Talking to yourself. You always think that what you do is right, and you never care about other people's feelings." Lily looked at Oh Ming in front of her, chuckled, and bent down to pick up the shower head. She lifted his hand with the cast and rubbed the shower head on his body. She said, "Uncle Wen should come and pick you up tomorrow. If you want to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau, just go. It doesn't matter who you get married with, whether it's Shun Manting, Zhang Manting, or Li Manting. I know my identity. I will not interfere with your life in the future, nor will I enter your world, so you don't have to think about comforting me. I have money now, and I'm a cartoonist. I don't need to depend on you to live, and I don't need you to be responsible for me. After you go back, remember to live a good life and pretend that I never existed. Okay?" His voice became softer and softer. Lily's throat was sore, and she felt uncomfortable. Tears fell down, and Lily finally couldn't hold back her tears. But in the end, she did not cry out. Biting her lower lip, she expanded the water and washed it over Oh Ming's body. Oh Ming took in Lily's reaction. He pulled her into his arms and whispered, "No, I won't allow it. There is no Shin Manting, Zhang Manting, or Li Manting. I only want you, Lily. I don't want to marry anyone except you." However, Lily smiled bleakly and hung up the shower head. For a moment, the water was rushing toward Lily's head. Lily closed her eyes and unbuttoned her clothes one by one. Soon, she took off her top. Oh Ming quickly lowered his eyes. His throat felt dry, and his Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Feigning ignorance, he reached forward to touch it. Chapter 12:16. Ming's body stiffened. For a moment, he didn't know how to react. Lily saw his obviously stiff body and his obvious reaction. She bit her lower lip. She went forward to take a bath towel and put it on his head. You can go out. With that, she opened the bathroom door. Take 1 step forward, turn left, and take 3 steps out of the bathroom. After about 4 or 5 steps, you'll reach the bed. Ming's body didn't move. When Lily saw that, her lips curled into a mocking smile. I'll get ready. Get ready? Prepare for what? Ming had an ominous feeling in his heart, but when he heard that, he didn't ask much. He felt his way out. Lily turned the water on to the maximum and took a shower before walking out. Ming had already put on his bathrobe and boxers. He seemed to have sensed her coming out and turned his head in her direction. Lily was wrapped in a bath towel. She walked forward barefoot and looked at Ming. Then, she let go of the bath towel. Ming's body stiffened, and he sat in the same place without moving. Lily didn't notice his reaction. Looking at his unfocused eyes, she pushed his shoulders and fell on the bed. Then, her soft lips fell on his lips. Ming had never imagined that Lily would do that. Subconsciously, he reached out and hugged her. Lily's kiss didn't go deep. She gently moved down and sucked on his Adam's apple. Ming's reaction, which had calmed down with great difficulty, suddenly rushed up again, and it was fiercer and more urgent than before. His reaction was too violent, and Lily could clearly sense the change in him. Then, she slowly kissed him inch by inch. Ming hugged her and buckled her up with his legs. He pressed her down with one hand to bring her closer to him. The warm and soft body pressed against his, and the wonderful feeling made his heart itch. But he didn't rush to do anything to her. The strange feeling in his heart grew stronger and stronger. There was something wrong with this woman. Ming knew her too well. The more she acted like this, the more he felt that something was wrong. What do you want? To give it to you. Lily's words were straightforward. Don't you want it? I'll give it to you. Yes, very much. But how did Lily change so much? This was not normal. Is there a but? When Lily heard that, she rubbed her body against his, easily igniting his anger. In a low voice, she said, but after I give it to you, we'll really break up. Just think of it as having a breakup party. Breakup party? The fire in Ming's heart suddenly froze. What do you mean? After this, don't ever see me again. Lily didn't look at his expression. She pressed on top of him, lowered her head, and kissed his chest. You and I are not from the same world. Forcing ourselves to be together won't lead to a good result. Who said that? Ming gritted his teeth and said angrily, You said I was self-righteous. What about you? Surnamed you. You're even more self-righteous than me. Whatever you say, in any case, there would be no future between them. Chapter 12:17. What last time? What breakup sex? When she said those things, did she ask for his permission? Ming was furious, but he didn't know what else to say other than to reject her. Ming turned around and faced his back to Lily. Lily was pushed away, and for some reason, she let out a sigh of relief. Looking at Ming's curled back, she asked, You really don't want to? Ming was swollen to the point of pain. How could he not want to? Ming had no doubt that if there were any problems in the future, it would definitely be because of today. But if it was the last time, he would rather not. He didn't want anything else. What he wanted was her, not the last time, and definitely not the breakup sex. Ming pulled the blanket over his head and remained silent. Lily picked up the towel she had just taken off and covered her body with it. Then I'll leave first. Leave? When he heard that word, Ming was even more sensitive and jumped up. He turned around and reached out to grab her. Opening his arms, he pulled Lily into his embrace and said angrily, Why are you leaving? Who said you could leave? With that, he carried Lily and turned around to fall onto the bed. You're not allowed to leave. Aren't you blind? Lily's back was facing him. She could clearly feel the warmth coming from him. She coldly smiled. How can a blind person hug me so accurately? This is called telepathy. Ming didn't have the slightest awareness of being exposed. He hugged her and nuzzled her neck. I can feel wherever you are. Otherwise, how do you think I chased you all the way here? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? Lily turned her head and looked into his eyes. At the same time, Ming closed his eyes and said, "If you don't believe me, you can try. I can find you wherever you are, regardless of whether I have eyes or not." Lily let go of his hand and wrapped herself in the towel and took 2 steps back. Ming closed his eyes and reached out to grab Lily. Lily's eyes darkened. She took 2 steps to the left. At the same time, Ming reached out to the left. Lily went to the right, and Ming did the same. She was pretty sure she hadn't made a sound. But Ming really seemed to have a telepathic connection. He could clearly sense her location every time. Throughout the whole process, Ming did not open his eyes. Lily stepped forward to stand in front of Ming and reached out to touch his cheek. Would I never see such a proud man in the future? Would such beautiful eyes never be able to see again in the future? Lily couldn't tell if she felt sorry for him, or if she sympathized with him, or if she felt both. Ming closed his eyes and held her hand. In a low voice, he said, "In the future, even if I am blind, I will always remember your face. I will never forget you." "Ming, do you love me?" "Love," she blurted out without hesitation. "How much?" "Without you, I will die." When Lily heard that, she burst out laughing. He moved his hand away and tried to retract it, but it was held tightly. Ming's eyes were still closed as he held her hand. "You don't believe me. Then do you trust me?" "I believe you." Still, without the slightest hesitation. "I don't love you. I don't want to be with you." Chapter 12:18. His eyes were full of pity. His dark brown pupils were bright and as deep as a lake at night. Lily was clearly reflected in his eyes. When Lily saw his eyes, her heart trembled slightly, and an unknown emotion surged. It rushed to her heart, and then it rushed to her eyes. The liquid suddenly filled up, and in a flash, it drooped down. Ming looked at her and covered her face with one hand. He whispered, "Why are you crying?" Hearing that, Lily was even more sure that he had seen it. Just a moment ago, she was still thinking about what he should do in the future. At that moment, Lily felt that her heart was like a roller coaster, and the ups and downs were indescribable. Lily couldn't help but pout, and the grievance in her heart suddenly came out. She opened her mouth and cried, and big drops of tears fell. When Ming saw this, he felt even more distressed. He pulled her over with one hand, kissed her wet hair, and whispered, "Don't cry." The extremely gentle voice had its own unique charm. Her originally wavering heart was suddenly hooked back to him. Now, even if she wanted to, she couldn't. Lily lay on his shoulder and cried like a child. She shouted, "You liar." When Ming heard the childish yell, he smiled and coaxed her in a low voice, "Yes, I'm a liar. You clearly saw it. Why did you lie to me? Why did you do this to me?" Lily raised her fist and punched him twice on the back. She didn't use much strength, and it didn't cause any pain. Ming hugged her tighter and whispered, "I was afraid that you would hate me. How could I trick you into coming back if I didn't hurt myself? Even if you hurt yourself, I don't want to talk to you. If I didn't hurt myself, I'm afraid you wouldn't even look at me," Lily said. What Ming had said that day was too cruel. He thought that he would really be like that for the rest of his life, leaving no way out for himself. Who knew? After waking up from coma for 2 days, he could suddenly see. This kind of surprise brought Ming not only joy, but also regret. He regretted his cheap mouth, regretted his impulsiveness. Based on Lily's character, if she found out that he had recovered and wanted to get back together with her, she would probably run even further and faster. Now, although it wasn't the best time to confess, he couldn't pretend anymore. If he continued to pretend, he would be exposed sooner or later. He might as well confess himself and perhaps suffer less. If the incident in the afternoon happened a few more times, it would be enough to make him suffer. Recalling Shun Julia's prank in the afternoon, Ming gritted his teeth. After crying for a few minutes, she quickly wiped her face, straightened up, and pushed him hard. Ming was pushed, but he didn't loosen his grip. Instead, he tightened his grip. "Let go." "I won't." Ming's voice was calm, but there was no room for dispute. "The reason why I confessed so quickly was not to let you go." Lily grinned. "Since you're fine, There's no need for me to take care of you anymore. You can let go. I'm going back. Go back. Oh Ming's eyes darkened, and he pulled her hard. Your man is here. Where else are you going? Didn't we break up? Chapter 12:19. Oh Ming's voice was domineering, with an indisputable tone of command. I don't want to. You Lily pushed him away again. You have no sincerity at all. Why should I get back together with you? When Oh Ming heard that, his eyes lit up. His heart was filled with joy. His lips unconsciously curled up as he asked, What kind of sincerity do you want? You Lily tried to shake his hand off, but she couldn't. With that movement, the bath towel, which wasn't wrapped tightly, fell off. Oh Ming's gaze naturally fell on it. His eyes darkened, and his emotions surged. His gaze was filled with a desire to possess her. He was like a hungry wolf that had seen meat. You Lily's hair stood on end under his gaze. She quickly covered her chest with her remaining hand. But by covering the top, the bottom was exposed. Under Oh Ming's naked gaze, Yu Lily's face became redder and redder. She reached out and covered Oh Ming's eyes. You're not allowed to look. Oh Ming's only hand was holding onto Yu Lily's arm. Now that his eyes were covered, he couldn't move her away. His lips curled up in a good mood as he said, Why can't I look at my woman? Who's your woman? You're so shameless. Yu Lily's voice was full of disdain. However, when he said these words, the corners of his lips curled up. Unable to control his emotions, his heart was overflowing with uncontrollable chaos. At that moment, Yu Lily felt like she was about to fly. What should I do? I'm so happy. She was so happy that she didn't know what to do. Covering Oh Ming's eyes, Yu Lily looked at his lips. She tiptoed forward and planted a kiss on his lips. However, after such a kiss, Yu Lily greedily wanted more and more. Her soft lips moved around his. Yu Lily stuck out her tongue and gently licked it. Oh Ming's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Subconsciously, he tightened his grip on her wrist. He pulled her over and easily held her in his arms. But he didn't dare move again. In your eyes, what's the difference between me and an inflatable doll? Yes, of course there was. He had never used a doll. She had always been the only woman. He had never even touched a doll. However, if he behaved too horny, this woman would definitely be unhappy. Therefore, he could not move. Yu Lily kissed him for a long time, but Oh Ming didn't respond at all. Feeling defeated, she bit his lips in revenge. Oh Ming felt the pain and quickly pursed his lips. He suddenly felt a little uncertain about what this woman was thinking. Yu Lily gritted her teeth and hit him angrily. What? You were the one I wanted just now. Don't you want it now? When Oh Ming heard that, he was stunned for a second or two. Then he asked carefully, Can I? Yu Lily felt even more suffocated. She had already taken the initiative to this extent, and he actually asked her if he could. How come I've never seen him so honest before? Annoyed, Yu Lily pushed him away forcefully and shouted, No. Oh Ming was caught off guard and stumbled, but he immediately curled his lips into a smile. He pulled her back and threw her onto the bed. Chapter 12:20. The pair of eyes in front of her were as bright as the stars, bright and full of spirit. Such a pair of eyes, this is Oh Ming. Yu Lily's heart quietly rippled with joy. She quickly pushed him away and shouted, Get lost! Together. Yu Lily turned over and was about to crawl away, but Oh Ming quickly put his arm around her shoulders. Oh Ming was not wearing any clothes. He pressed her under his body, and his hot lips fell on her smooth white back. Yu Lily turned her head and saw that his left hand was still in a cast. She quickly calmed down. Oh Ming also clearly noticed her gaze. He leaned forward and kissed her gently, whispering, It's okay. Does it hurt? It doesn't hurt. Really? Yeah. Oh Ming gently pressed her against him. Really? His lips reached out and kissed her neck. His movements were gentle and slow. The feeling of numbness spread all over her body little by little. Yu Lily was lying on the bed. Under his gentleness, she couldn't help but raise her head and squint her eyes. She reached back and put her arms around his neck. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. Oh Ming's movements froze. At the same time, Yu Lily was also stunned. Turning to look at the door, Yu Lily and Oh Ming looked at each other. They both thought of the same person at the same time. Ding dong. The doorbell rang again, and it sounded a little hurried. Yulili quickly got up and pushed Oming away. After rolling over, she pulled the quilt over her body. She was naked, so of course she couldn't go out to see anyone. But her clothes were just soaked. Yulili was a little worried. She looked at Oming and asked, "What should I do?" Oming looked at Yulili, narrowed his eyes, and asked, "You and Shunjuya are together again?" When Yulili heard that, she felt even more confused. She immediately retorted, "How is that possible?" She became even more annoyed. "What do you mean by again? I've never been with him, okay? Then why do you look like you're having an affair?" Oming looked at her with disgust. Then he leaned forward, squinted his eyes, and whispered, "Isn't it normal for us to be together? Even if we do something, it's none of his business." The doorbell rang twice more, and this time it sounded even more urgent than before. "I can't. We broke up." Everyone knew that they had broken up. If this was seen, how embarrassing it would be. When Oming heard that, he became even more unhappy. He bent down and looked down her face. He narrowed his eyes and asked, "When did you break up again? Have you forgotten what you said in your house?" Yulili didn't look scared at all. She stared at him and asked, "Do you dare to remember what you said at that time?" "I forgot." Oming pulled her up. "Don't remember that kind of thing. I had no choice but to say those words. At that time, I thought I would be blind for the rest of my life. My mother didn't like you, and I didn't want to hold you up. So Yulili had already guessed it, but she hadn't expected Oming to explain it in such a way. Yulili pursed her lips and was about to say something when the phone in her bag rang. Without a doubt, it was Shunjuya. Yulili covered her body with the quilt and bent over to pick up the bag that had fallen on the ground. Before she could pick it up, Oming picked it up. He looked at it and saw that it was indeed Shunjuya. Chapter 12:21. Yulili was shocked. When she was about to grab it, she heard a voice coming from the other side. "Lily." It was Shunjuya's voice. "Yulili is taking a shower," Oming said calmly as he walked away. As he spoke, he didn't forget to glance at Yulili. Yulili's face quickly turned red, and she shut her mouth and didn't speak. "Shower." In Oming's room. "Shower? What does that mean?" "Yeah." Oming didn't even blink when he talked big. He waved his hand at Yulili and motioned her to go to the bathroom. "I'll open the door for you now." "Wait a minute. Why didn't you open the door just now?" "I just pressed the doorbell for so long. If you wanted to open the door, you could have already opened it, right? Or you." Oming put on his bathrobe, tied it, and walked toward the door. When Yulili saw that he was really going to open the door, she covered the quilt and was about to go crazy. She quickly jumped out of the quilt and ran toward the bathroom. At the same time that the bathroom door was closed, Oming opened the door of the room. Shunjuya immediately rushed in at the same time that he opened the door. He looked around, and finally his eyes fell on the door of the bathroom. When he got closer, he heard the sound of water coming from inside. Shunjuya was angry and looked at Oming. Oming was wearing a white bathrobe and holding a mobile phone in his hand. His eyes were unfocused, and he didn't know where to look as he closed the door. But there was an indescribable pride in his expression. Shunjuya felt something was wrong and gritted his teeth. "Why is she taking a shower here?" "She was wet," Oming said concisely. When Shunjuya heard this, his expression was even more desperate. "Wet? Wet, Oming?" Shunjuya stepped forward angrily and grabbed the collar of Oming's bathrobe. "What did you do to her?" Compared with Shunjuya's excitement, Oming seemed much calmer. His gaze was unfocused, and he wasn't looking in any direction. However, such an expression seemed more like a provocation. "What can I do? I can't see, and my hand is broken. What else do you think I can do?" When Shunjuya heard that, he felt that it made sense. Her heart relaxed a little, and she unhappily let go of Oming and pushed him away. Oming straightened his collar and said calmly, "Why don't you ask her what she did to me? Why is it wet?" Shunjuya, who had finally managed to calm himself down, became even more furious. He roared, "Oming, wet, showering, doing something to him. Could it be Yulili went by herself? No, it can't be. Yulili is not that kind of woman. Why are you so excited?" I'm so scared that I don't even dare to say it. Although he said that, he didn't seem afraid at all. Instead, it was filled with provocation. Shun Julia calmed himself down and asked, "What do you mean by that?" "She helped me take a bath and accidentally got herself wet. So now she's taking a bath. Is there a problem?" Shun Julia's expression darkened, and he asked, "Help you bathe?" Chapter 12:22. Undressing, putting on clothes, showering, and wearing underwear. Isn't that? Shun Julia couldn't even imagine that scene. He couldn't accept it. The woman he liked was helping another man put on his underwear, and they used to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Who could stand that? Stepping forward angrily, Shun Julia reached out and grabbed Ming's collar again. He gritted his teeth and roared, "Oh, are you shameless? You let a girl do this for you, and you said it so loudly. What do you think you Lily is?" Ming was grabbed, but he didn't have much of a reaction. Hearing that, he laughed and said, "I didn't say it very loudly, did I? Why did you have such a big reaction? You Lily is my girlfriend. Isn't it normal for her to help me bathe and dress?" Bah! Shun Julia couldn't stand it anymore, and his spittle splashed out. The smile on Ming's face disappeared. He reached out and wiped his face, pushing Shun Julia away. "Mr. Shun, don't go too far." "Who is the one who went too far? Didn't you break up? Why are you still so entangled? Why? Is it because you're blind that the women who used to be entangled with you don't want you now? So, you can only pester you Lily, right?" Shun Julia sneered. "That's right. Who can stand your mother's mouth? Both mother and son have the same mouth. Serves you right that no one wants you." The bright smile on Ming's face had disappeared, and it was replaced by an inexplicable smile. A pair of eyes looked forward without focus. Shun Julia knew that Ming couldn't see him, but he inexplicably felt a sinister chill. Ming looked calm and said, "In the face of the crazy bark of a loser, I can only give you sympathy. You." Shun Julia's heart suddenly began to explode. He raised his fist and punched Ming's face in front of him. However, before his fist landed, he heard the sound of the bathroom door being opened. Shun Julia's movements stopped abruptly. He turned his head and looked over. The first thing he saw was a snow-white shoulder. Before he had time to see more, he heard Yu Lily scream, and then the sound of the bathroom door being slammed. Yu Lily did it on purpose. Ming could tell that she was trying to calm Shun Julia down. Shun Julia had no idea what was going on. He stared at the door of the bathroom, and his mind was filled with images of fair skin. Her white, misty skin was beautiful. Tempting and beautiful, it lingered in his mind. Shun Julia felt his mouth go dry. Suddenly, a huge force came from his side. Shun Julia staggered and fell to the ground. "Ouch!" Shun Julia screamed. He looked up and cursed, Ming." "Shun Julia." Yu Lily's voice came from the bathroom. Shun Julia was at the door of the bathroom. When he heard the voice, he looked up and replied, "Here. Is enchanting back? Can you ask her to bring me a set of clothes? My clothes are all wet." When Shun Julia heard that, he immediately realized that Ming must have done it on purpose. Chapter 12:23. Shun Julia quickly left. After Ming closed the door to the room, he knocked on the bathroom door and said, "Let's go. Open the door and let me in." "No, I don't have anything to wear. It's not like I haven't seen it before. Open the door. I have a secret to tell you." Yu Lily's back was against the bathroom door. She felt a little chilly without any clothes on. When she heard Ming's words, she hesitantly opened the door. Unexpectedly, Ming suddenly came in and held her with one arm. He lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. Yu Lily was completely unprepared for such a surprise attack. Her eyes widened, and her hands were on Ming's chest. She struggled a little. Unexpectedly, Ming let go of her at once. Looking at her arms that were half covering her body, his eyes darkened. Shun Julia saw it just now. Saw it. Yu Lily was stunned, but she quickly understood what Ming was talking about. Yu Lily blushed. She could clearly see the displeasure in Ming's eyes and the obvious jealousy that surrounded him. Ming felt even more annoyed when he saw her delicate behavior. He pushed her against the sink and asked, Why did you suddenly open the door? I can solve it myself. I heard that the situation wasn't right. So you opened the door and let the guy see? Oming gritted his teeth in anger and pinched her nose. The guy's face changed when he saw it. It was like a male dog in heat. I only stretched out my hand. I shouldn't have seen anything. You're still talking? I saw it all. Thinking of how Shangelia had seen her bare shoulders, her heart felt like it had been scratched by a cat. Really? Lily felt a little guilty and shrank her neck. Seeing her like this, Ming felt even more depressed. He lifted one of her legs and gritted his teeth. Vixen, Lily was shocked and quickly pushed him away. She shouted, "What are you doing? They'll be here soon." Ming hugged her tighter and kissed her neck. He pressed his lips against her skin and whispered, "I can't wait anymore. I've been holding it in for a long time. Don't you know?" Lily pushed him and looked at the open bathroom door. She lowered her voice and said, "Are you crazy? What will we do when they come in?" "I can't get in. I locked it." Ming's lips moved lower and lower, igniting clusters of flames. Soon, they burned brightly. Lily hugged him and couldn't help but dance with his movements. Ding dong! The doorbell rang. When Lily heard the voice, her body tensed up. She pushed Ming hard and exclaimed, "Stop! They're coming." But Ming didn't care. He pressed her against his waist and sank. Ding dong! Ding dong! She subconsciously clenched her fists. Listening to the hurried doorbell, she pushed him harder and harder. Unexpectedly, Ming acted as if he couldn't hear it. He lowered his head and kissed her lips. His actions were rough but gentle. Inadvertently, it had stirred up layers of emotions. The wonderful feeling made her want to cry out. Lily reached out to cover her mouth. Her breath was heavy and lingering with the man in front of her, but she didn't dare to make a sound. Chapter 12:24. After all, there was a door between them, so the sound was not loud. But when she heard the sound, Lily felt even more guilty, and she felt even more excited. Ming looked up and saw Lily's expression of pleasure, pain, and anxiety. He smiled and was quite proud of himself. He forcefully removed Lily's hand from her body and slammed it into her with all his might. Lily couldn't hold back, and her throat let out a broken gasp. But she quickly bit her lower lip and lay on him to stop herself from making a sound. Ding dong! Ding dong! Ding dong! The doorbell kept ringing, and it became more and more urgent and frequent. Shangelia was outside, banging on the door and shouting, "Damn blind man! Open the door! I'm here to deliver clothes." It sounded like he was really angry. Lily looked up and pushed him. She gasped and whispered, "Hurry up." "All right." Ming's lips curled into a smile. His already heavy movements became faster and faster. Lily couldn't stand it anymore, and her breathing became more and more rapid. Slow down." Ming chuckled and slowed down a little. He whispered in her ear, "Tell him to stop knocking. It will affect my normal performance." Lily's face became even redder. She stared at him and growled, "Beast." "Huh?" Ming raised his eyebrows slightly, and his voice became longer. His movements suddenly stopped. "What did you say? Beast? What are you doing? That's not how sex works. Come on, I'll teach you." "No. Do you want to hear what we're doing? Keep your voice down." Although he said that, his movements were not small at all. The man's suppressed breathing and the woman's suppressed voice were isolated by the door. His movements became more and more urgent, and the sound became louder and louder. It formed a completely different style from the hurried doorbell and the shouting of banging on the door. Ding dong! Ding dong! Lily was knocked around, and her eyes were full of stars. The doorbell kept ringing, and she didn't know when it stopped. This was definitely the most exciting and most difficult thing Lily had ever experienced. The doorbell rang again, and a woman's voice came from outside. "Lily, are you in there?" Yi Qianqian knocked on the door. When she saw Shangelia's furious expression, she felt some sympathy for him. How much time had passed, and this man and woman were inside. TSK. If that was the case, then these two fellows were too bold. There was no response from inside. Yi Qian pressed the doorbell again and shouted, "You Lily, I brought you clothes." Just when Shun Juliet thought that no one was going to open the door, there was a soft sound from the door, and it was quickly opened. When Shun Juliet saw this, he immediately pushed the door open and entered. Ming was still wearing the bathrobe, and he didn't look any different from before. Shun Juliet was so angry that he roared, "Why didn't you open the door?" Ming was calm and composed. He didn't look like he had been yelled at all. He said calmly, "I don't want to open it." When Yi Qian saw it, she couldn't help but take another look at him. This kind of attitude is even more infuriating than directly shouting back. "So, why have you gotten over it now?" Yi Qian couldn't take it anymore. Chapter 12:25. I waited for so long, and you didn't open the door? Yi Qian felt that his words were not credible. She looked at him strangely and then looked into his eyes. She reached out and waved her hand in front of him. However, Ming still did not respond. It was as if he did not know that Yi Qian was testing him. Yi Qian pouted and walked to the door of the bathroom. Shun Julia wanted to come forward, but Yi Qian pushed him away and shouted, "What are you doing? I'm bringing clothes to a girl. Do you want to go in?" Hearing that, Shun Julia subconsciously looked at Ming. Ming acted as if he had not heard them. He turned around and groped his way to his bed. The bed was a little messy. At a glance, it was obvious that someone had slept in it. However, whether it was one person or two people who had lain on the bed, that would be... Thinking of this, Shun Julia was even more angry. If he had known this would happen, he would not have been so soft-hearted. Asking you, Lily, to take care of this guy was like sending a sheep to the tiger's mouth. Yi Qian knocked on the bathroom door and shouted, "Lily, it's me." The bathroom door opened quickly. Lily reached out her hand and said, "Why are you so late?" No one opened the door. "We can't come in." Yi Qian was a little angry. She pushed the door and wanted to squeeze in. "But you anyway, your ex-boyfriend can't see you. You could just open the door. People who don't know will think you are doing something in there." This was a half-truth, half-lie, mixed with a bit of testing. When Lily heard this, she immediately thought of what had happened, and her face suddenly became hot. That guy is so hateful. She had specially washed it with hot water and washed the sink for fear that someone would find any traces when coming in. This must be a guilty conscience, right? Or a secret affair? Thinking of this, her face became a little hot. "I'm doomed. I can't let Yi Qian see this." He reached out and pushed Yi Qian out. "Don't come in. Just give me the clothes. What are you afraid of? We are all women. You have clothes, and I have clothes." As Yi Qian spoke, she subconsciously turned her head to look at Shun Julia. She found that Shun Julia obviously cared and wanted to come in. She felt a little sympathy. "Why won't you let me in? What are you doing inside?" For the first time, Lily felt that Yi Qian was so gossipy. She cursed in her heart. However, since she had already said so much, if she still blocked the door and refused to let her in, it would undoubtedly arouse more suspicion. Lily thought about it and loosened her grip. Yi Qian pushed the door open and walked in. She found Lily hiding behind the door with a red face. She was a little surprised and asked, "Why is your face so red?" Yi Qian's words made Lily's heart tremble. However, he quickly pretended to be calm and snatched the clothes from Yi Qian's hands. He glared at her and said, "I don't have clothes to wear, so I had to turn the hot water to the maximum. How could I not turn red?" Yi Qian was skeptical. She looked her up and down. It seemed that other than her skin being fairer than hers, her breasts being bigger than hers, and her waist being slimmer than hers, there was no other difference. Feeling Yi Qian's gaze on her, Lily suddenly felt lucky that Ming was a little more anxious than usual. Chapter 12:26. She flipped through her clothes and found that they were all there. Under Yi Qian's gaze, Lily felt uneasy. She pushed her and said, "What are you looking at? You have them, so do I." "Yes, but they're not the same." Yi Qian turned her head away and said, "Go inside and put them on. I'm going out. I failed to spy on the enemy. It seems that there's nothing. Shun Julia is thinking too much." After she went out, Yi Qian looked at Shun Julia and shrugged. Well, it's late. Go back to sleep. I'll go back with Lily. I'll wait for you. It's not good for a girl to stay in a room with a man. Shunjilia's eyes were full of vigilance. He looked Oming up and down with obvious disdain. Oming leaned against the headboard and ignored him. Soon, the bathroom door opened, and Lily came out. Her hair was half wet and stuck to her head. As soon as she came out, she met Yi Qianqian's and Shunjilia's eyes. She felt her scalp go numb. You, come here, Oming suddenly said and sat up. Oming suddenly opened his mouth and sat up. His blank eyes were unfocused, and he didn't know where to look. Lily saw it clearly and silently gave Oming's acting a thumbs up. But how could she go over? Now that they had broken up, they had to find a logical time to get back together. Ignoring Oming, Lily turned around and took Yi Qianqian's hand. Let's go back. Yes, that's normal. Shunjilia breathed a sigh of relief and turned his head to look at Oming provocatively. Oming looked a little angry, but he still clenched his teeth and didn't say a word. Let's go. Have an early rest, blind man. We're going back to Kingstown tomorrow. Stay by yourself. Shunjilia waved his hand and followed Yi Qianqian and Lily. Lily didn't look back. Shunjilia noticed this small detail, and he finally relaxed after a whole night of anxiety. Behind the two women, and in front of the blind man, Shunjilia didn't hide his emotions. His mood was clear at a glance. Oming watched him go out, narrowed his eyes, and chuckled. Poor fellow, he really thought he had the upper hand. Forget it, there will be time for you to cry. Yi Qianqian and Lily were sent back to their room by Shunjilia. When she saw that Shunjilia had left, Yi Qianqian couldn't hold it in any longer. She pulled Lily aside and asked curiously, Hey, did you really bathe him? I heard from Shunjilia that you even help him get dressed and undressed. Doesn't that mean you saw everything? Hearing that, Lily felt even more guilty. Not only had he seen everything, he had also done everything that he should and shouldn't have done. However, this was not the time to lose. Lily coughed lightly, glanced at Yi Qianqian, and said, It's not the first time he's seen it. His eyes and hands are not convenient, so Chapter 1227. He isn't just he. Lily immediately thought of the famous comedian, Fei Yu. Smiling secretly, Lily pushed Yi Qianqian away and said, Cut it out. How long has it been? How is it not long? I locked Shunjilia outside for almost half an hour. When he came to find me, I was taking a shower. Oh, his face was green. Poor thing. Yi Qianqian shook her head. But your ex-boyfriend is also very good. Do you know what he said when Shunjilia asked him why he didn't open the door? The soundproofing was very good, so Lily didn't hear what they said outside. But with Oming's wretched expression, Lily could guess what he had said just by imagining it. What does it have to do with me? Don't want to open the door for you? Yi Qianqian gave her a thumbs up. Then she mimicked Oming's expression and tone and said calmly, I don't want to open it. Lily smiled and looked as if she had expected it. She reached out and patted the pillow behind her. Go to sleep. It's getting late. Yi Qianqian squinted and looked at Lily suspiciously. Your expression doesn't look like it when you talk about your ex, don't tell me you. Oh, this girl has never been in a relationship. How can her eyes be so sharp? Lily turned her head and glared at her. She reached out and slapped her down. What nonsense are you talking about? Seriously, have you ever thought about getting back together with him? Go to sleep. We'll talk about this tomorrow. She was almost exhausted. She had gotten up early, and she had been dragged into the bathroom. Now, her body was sore and aching. You can sleep later. You tell me first. Yi Qianqian made up her mind not to let her rest. She pulled the quilt in her arms and asked, That man is not a good person. If you get back together with him, Shunjilia will be too pitiful. Don't you see how good Shunjilia is to you? He likes you very much. Boss Qianqian, I'm so sleepy. I'm really sleepy. Let me go. Lily was half awake. She put her hands together and said, Can we talk about it tomorrow? No. She was sent by Shunjilia. How could she go back to the organization without completing the task? But Lily didn't want to talk to her anymore. She closed her eyes and looked like she was going to sleep. When Yi Qianqian saw that, she heaved a sigh of relief and said, Tell me, do you still like that ex-boyfriend of yours? I like it. Lily pulled a pillow over and put it under her head. You should have heard that I'm his sugar mommy. Yes, he had heard a little about it. However, hearing it from Lily's own mouth, Yi Chanqian was still a little surprised. He raised me for 3 years. He paid for my education, food, and life. He treated me very well, really very well. Lily held the pillow, raised her face, looked at Yi Chanqian, and said, when I met him, I was only 17 years old, and I gave all my first to him. Yi Chanqian hadn't expected Lily to go into so much detail. She didn't know what to say. There was only one thought left in her mind. It's over. Isn't there no hope for Xinjilia? Then, will you get back together with him? Yes, of course he would. However, was it too soon to tell them that they had gotten back together? Chapter 12:28. When Yi Chanqian heard that, she immediately felt a little strange, especially when she saw Lily's serious expression. There was an indescribable feeling in her heart. This is the legendary envy, jealousy, and hate. Enough. Yi Chanqian couldn't hold it in anymore. She reached out with both hands and pushed Lily away. With a disgusted look, she said, enough. You reek of love from head to toe. Disgusting. When Lily heard that, she shook her head sympathetically. She covered her head with the quilt and turned over. She regretfully said, the anger of a single dog. When Yi Chanqian heard that, her eyes widened. She immediately crawled under the quilt and pinched her waist. Lily was caught off guard and exclaimed. Then she burst into laughter. What are you doing? A single dog is not angry. It's jealous. You're already an ex, but you still can't forget him. Love your sister. Yi Chanqian quickly retracted her hand and hugged Lily's shoulder from behind. But to be honest, I can tell that your ex-boyfriend really wants to get back together with you. You didn't see the look on his face just now. He wanted to tie you up. How could I not know? Hearing Yi Chanqian's words, Lily quietly smiled. But if he treats you like that before, if he really wants to get back together with you, don't agree too quickly. Don't show that you can't have him. Hearing that, Lily was embarrassed. With her back facing Yi Chanqian, she didn't dare look back and asked why. Why? You're a comic book writer yourself. Shouldn't you be very clear about this kind of story? Men are all the same. They don't cherish things that are too easy to get. You must keep him hanging. Don't let him think that you are cheap, and don't let him think that you are only suitable for him. If you do that, your position in the future will not be so stable. Lily felt a little speechless at Yi Chanqian's words. But what made her even more speechless was that she actually felt that it was very reasonable. Then what should I do? She was already. Yi Chanqian was completely unaware and said, in fact, people are all the same. They all have bad habits. Especially men. Men like Oh Ming, who are rich, powerful, and handsome, all have one thing in common. That is, they are cheap. The more I can't get it, the more I want it. This feeling, at first, is dominated by desire, but it will slowly change. If I can't get it, it will become possessiveness, and if I can't get it, it will become a desire to conquer. As Yi Chanqian spoke, she stretched out her hand and slowly clenched it into a fist in front of Lily. After the desire to conquer, it will slowly become a habit. When you get it again, there will be a kind of It's not easy to come by, so I must cherish it. Do you understand? Lily was stunned and turned to look at Yi Chanqian. She looked at her in surprise and applauded in admiration. Are people who have never been in love so imaginative? It's really great. Chapter 12:29. When Lily heard that, she nodded her head cooperatively and gently comforted her. Yes, you're right. Shall we go to bed first? Yi Chanqian was even more annoyed when she heard that. She kicked her and shouted, get lost. Lily's leg hurt from the kick. She blinked her eyes aggrievedly and quickly hugged her. Sister, you are my sister. Don't be angry, okay? Yi Chanqian was only a little displeased. She wasn't angry. When he heard Lily's cowardly response, he rolled his eyes at her and flipped the blanket over. Go to sleep. Okay. Lily couldn't have asked for more. She covered herself with the blanket and immediately turn around. However, even though he was sleepy, he couldn't fall asleep. His mind was filled with what Yi Qianqian had just said. Men's deep-rooted bad habits. They have one thing in common. They are despicable. The more I can't get it, the more I want it. TSK. Although Yi Qianqian didn't have any actual combat experience, she had to admit that the experience she had gleaned from the gossip was King reasonable. Yi Qianqian knew that she wasn't asleep, so she ignored her and closed her eyes to sleep. Suddenly, the phone that was charging on the bedside table rang. Then came the second, third, and fourth sound. Yu Lily covered her head and pushed Yi Qianqian. Cell phone. Yi Qianqian reluctantly crawled out from under the covers and picked up her cell phone. Just by looking at it, he straightened up and rolled on the ground like a carp. Yu Lily was shocked by Yi Qianqian's reaction. She raised her hand and slapped her across the face. What are you doing? Yi Qianqian wasn't in the mood to argue with Yu Lily. She read the message again and again, and her heart could no longer calm down. When Yu Lily saw her serious expression, she climbed up and asked, "What's wrong?" "My sister, Yi Yu, the little actor who had just risen to fame." Yi Qianqian didn't look too good. She looked at Yu Lily with a grave expression and said, "You're injured." Yu Lily was also shocked. She took the phone from Yi Qianqian. It was Yi Qianqian's father. "Daddy, Qianqian, where are you now? Yo-Yo got hurt at work. It seems pretty serious. Daddy, I want to see her. Come with me." Below was a piece of news sent by Yi Qianqian's father. The headline was striking frowny face that was close. Yi Yu fell from a wire during filming and was sent to the emergency room in the middle of the night. Looking at the time, it was tonight. He clicked on it and saw what had happened at 9 o'clock in the evening. There was also a picture in the news. The red bloodstain looked shocking. Yi Qianqian had already gotten up to change her clothes. She said, "I'm going back now. My father must be very anxious. I have to go back with him to see my sister." "Are you crazy? It's already past 11 o'clock. Where would you find a car to take you back? Furthermore, Yi Yu is filming in the studio. She must be sent to a nearby hospital. Even if you go there now, you won't make it in time." Yi Qianqian froze when she heard that. Yu Lily took the opportunity to calm her down and said, "The most important thing for you now is to let your father settle down. Tomorrow morning, you'll take the plane to H-City where she lives." Yi Qianqian thought about it and nodded. She picked up the phone and called her father. Yi Yu's incident had caused quite a stir in the industry. For a moment, there was a lot of discussion, and it also became a little popular on Weibo. Chapter 1230. Kingstown, Imperial Pavilion Villa Complex. In the huge villa, only the master bedroom was dimly lit. The warm yellow light elongated the tall figure. In the room, the distinct lines of his muscles were outlined by the black satin nightgown. Hearing the urgent voice on the other end of the phone, the man slowly lit a cigarette. He didn't smoke it. He just held it between his fingers and allowed the white smoke to rise. "GM Lee, what should we do? This movie is very important. The second female lead has a lot of scenes. If Yu can't do it, we'll have to replace her. This person was personally sent in by this person. If they were to replace him, wouldn't it be a loss of face for this person? But if he didn't replace her, how are they going to continue filming?" Yi Yu's injury wasn't looking good. It would probably take at least 3 to 5 months to recover. Fortunately, it hadn't hurt her face. Otherwise, the girl's acting career would be worrying. Li Jinan was silent for a moment. His brows furrowed slightly. He tapped his fingers on the table and asked slowly, "Have you informed her family?" The person in charge hadn't expected that Li Jinan's first concern would be this. After thinking for a moment, he said, "I've informed them. I think her husband and parents have been informed." "Got it. Keep an eye on her and try your best to satisfy her needs." Yes, but the director of this movie is asking for your opinion. Should we replace her or replace who? There's a pretty good actress in our company recently. She's as famous as Yi Yu. She has already gone to the director for an interview. She can replace Yi Yu's position. It was obvious that they had already prepared everything and were just waiting for his help. Li Jinan suddenly chuckled. He flicked the ash from his cigarette and said, Replace her. Yes. The person in charge finally breathed a sigh of relief. I'll make the arrangements then. Goodbye, GM Lee. Lee Jin couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense. He hung up the phone and tossed it onto the bed. With the cigarette between his fingers, he lay down on the bed. Yi Yu is injured. Lee Jin reached out and massaged his temples. Even he didn't know what he was feeling. She was the first woman, the only woman, but she was already married. The reason Lee Jin hadn't had any direct contact with her recently was to avoid arousing suspicion. However, the care he gave her behind the scenes was also a source of gossip. Many people were guessing whether the CEO of NC was interested in this small celebrity. Gradually, the rumors started to spread. Even Qin Shuhua came to ask him if he had anything to do with the girl. It wasn't easy for him to get away with it, and now something like this happened. If he specially went to H City to see her, it would definitely cause trouble again. With a heavy sigh, Li Jinnan's temples throbbed. Yi Yu's injuries weren't light, but they weren't serious either. He had a concussion from the fall and was still in a coma. His leg bone was slightly fractured, and there were many abrasions on his body. It looked like he was covered in blood, but fortunately, it was not serious. Yi Qianqian had caught the earliest flight over. When she heard that Yi Yu was well, she immediately reported it to her father. Unexpectedly, Yi Qianqian bumped into a familiar face as soon as she returned from her phone call. Chapter 1231. When Yi Qianqian saw the expression on Shun Luo An's face, the anxiety and anger that had been suppressed in her heart for a long time suddenly erupted. He quickly walked up to them in an aggressive manner. When a young doctor saw the state Yi Qianqian was in, he felt his hair stand on end. When Shen Luo turned to look at Yi Qianqian, he saw that her face bore some resemblance to Yi Yu's. He roughly knew who she was. Shen Luo and Yi Qianqian's voice was not loud, but it sounded a little fierce. Shen Luo stood there with his hands in his pockets. He looked at Yi Qianqian and raised his eyebrows. You're Yi Yu's older sister, aren't you? The capital is only 2 hours' drive from H City. Yi Yu has been in a coma since last night. As her husband, why did you only arrive now? And with that expression, people who didn't know better would think that he was here to collect a debt. The more Yi Qianqian thought about it, the more she felt that it was not worth it. This guy is really annoying. Fortunately, Yi Yu was deeply in love with him. She had always dreamed of marrying him since she was young. She didn't expect this guy's true colors to be so despicable that he would even lay his hands on his own sister. He was simply inhumane. When Shen Luo heard Yi Qianqian's words, his face was cold and expressionless. He said, "Aren't I here now? You." Yi Qianqian suddenly felt infuriated. Just as Yi Qianqian was about to say something, Shen Luo suddenly walked around her in the direction of the ward. He raised his voice and said, "I'm here, but I'm still unconscious. You should save it. You've been schemed against by Yi Yu since you were young. How can you pretend to be a good sister? What's the meaning of this?" Yi Qianqian shouted at Shun Kuo's back. However, Shun Luo had already entered the intensive care unit. Yi Qianqian stomped her foot and followed him in. Yi Yu wasn't particularly popular yet. She didn't have an assistant of her own, and her manager was busy with all sorts of public relations. She had no time for that. Did Yi Yu lie there alone the entire night? When Yi Qianqian thought of that, she felt even more indignant for her friend. Poor girl. She's not a bad person. Why does anyone care about her? It was all Shen Luo's fault. Yi Qianqian was even more annoyed. When she walked in, she saw him looking down at her from above. Yi Yu, who was lying on the bed, had already opened her eyes. Seeing this, Yi Qianqian was overjoyed. She immediately turned around and ran out, shouting, "Doctor, the patient is awake." However, Shen Luo remained standing. He had no intention of notifying the medical staff. Yi Qianqian looked at the man in front. Shen Luo looked as if he was being torn. Yi Yu, Yi the man's eyes. Shen's face shone and said, "Shun, Shun." The man in front of her was expressionless. Other than the coldness in his eyes, there was nothing else. I said. Yi said, I shun was shun on. Shun shun luo Shun luo and stepped forward and raised his eyebrows slightly. I thought I'd see your corpse when I came here. I didn't expect that to be the case. Yi Inshan felt. His. Shin felt. Qian was. The sound of the heartbeat machine beating rapidly was a far cry from the previous calmness. Chapter 12:32. Yi Yuyu's eyes turned red, and tears began to flow. Looking at the man in front of her, Yi Yuyu's heart, which had finally calmed down, began to ache again. Shun Luo. Yi Yuyu's voice wasn't loud, and it sounded weak. As she spoke, her head hurt uncontrollably. It was as if the vibration of her vocal cords was stirred. Yi Yuyu couldn't help but squint her eyes. She felt as if she was going to faint again. Shun Luo, Anne's face was full of surprise. He smiled warmly, but his eyes were cold. Now, you don't even call me Brother Luoan? You can't pretend anymore? Yi Yuyu's head was buzzing. She stared at Shun Luoan, and tears slipped from the corner of her eyes. The sound of footsteps could be heard from outside. Soon, a doctor and nurse came in. Yi Qianqian followed closely behind and looked at Yi Yuyu. Yi Yuyu's eyes seemed to be nailed to Shun Luoan. She couldn't look away. Shun Luoan's eyelids were gently closed, and an inscrutable smile hung on his lips. He put his hands in his trouser pockets and turned to walk out. The abnormal heartbeat on the heartbeat monitor revealed her mood swings. Yi Qianqian watched Shun Luoan walk out and felt a little regretful. If I had known, I wouldn't have let him in. Seeing Shun Luoan walk out, Yi Qianqian followed him. Shun Luoan heard the footsteps behind him and suddenly stopped. With his back turned, he said, Since you are Yi Yuyu's sister, I'll have to trouble you for the next few days. I still have things to do. I'll pay the hospital fees until she's discharged. In other words, he doesn't intend to stay here to take care of Yi Yuyu? Yi Qianqian's eyes widened, and she flew into a rage. She is your wife. Where are you going to fool around? What could be more important than your wife's life? Wife. Shun Luo, and seemed to have heard a joke. He chuckled and turned to look at Yi Qianqian. He raised his eyebrows slightly. Maybe she treats me as her husband, but I've never treated her as my wife. Yi Qianqian's lungs were about to explode. She had never seen such an abominable man. How could such a guy be worthy of such a good woman as Yi Yuyu? You scum. Yuyu has liked you since you were a child, and this is how you repay her? If you don't like her, why did you marry her in the first place? Aren't you being cheap? Yi Qianqian's words were sharp. Even the volume of his voice was not small, considering that this was a hospital. When Shun Luo heard this, he turned around slightly and glanced at Yi Qianqian. Especially when he saw Yi Qianqian's furious expression, he smiled warmly like a spring breeze. But the words that came out of his mouth were hard to tell if he was praising or criticizing her. They really are sisters. Their personalities are similar to when she was young. When Shun Luo said this, an indescribable emotion flashed across his eyes. It seemed to be nostalgia and tenderness. But soon, he turned around and walked forward. She wanted me to marry her, so I married her. I owe her that. The current Yi Yuyu was much more hypocritical than her. She was becoming more and more of a hypocrite. Chapter 12:33. Did I not take responsibility? Shun Luo stopped in his tracks and looked at Yi Qianqian with a faint smile. Yi Qianqian became even more furious. She roared, What kind of responsibility is this? Yi Yuyu is lying inside. I wasn't the one who asked her to lie in there. What's the point of getting angry at me? Shun Luo didn't look guilty at all. He raised his eyebrows and asked confidently. The expression on Shun Luo's face became more and more strange when he felt the gazes from all around him. It was a smile that was not a smile. It seemed sinister and cold. It didn't feel like he was facing his wife at all. In fact, it didn't feel like he was facing a friend. Instead, it felt like he was facing an extremely disgusting person, a person that he hated the most. I will pay for the medical fees. If you don't want to take care of me, I can hire a caregiver. Please just tell me. For a moment, Yi Qianqian didn't know what to say. To think that a husband would have such an attitude when facing his heavily injured wife. When Shenluo saw that she had nothing else to say, he turned around and quickly left with light footsteps. His figure was elegant and his figure was tall. Just looking at his back was enough to make people unable to come back to their senses. But why was it like this? The man Yu loved shouldn't be like this. Yi Qianqian was a little absent-minded. She turned around and returned to the ward. After a series of examinations, the doctors and nurses reminded Yi Qianqian of a few things to take note of and quickly left. Yi Yu fell asleep again. Her eyes were watery, and her face was pale. Yi Qianqian's heart ached even more. Suddenly, the cell phone in her pocket rang. Yi Qianqian was shocked. She quickly grabbed her phone and walked out. It was Shun Julia. When Yi Qianqian saw Shun Julia, she couldn't help but feel angry. Shun Luo and Shun Julia were brothers. Yi Qianqian picked up the phone in a huff and snapped, "What is it?" Shun Julia was baffled by the roar. He was stunned for a moment before he asked, "How is my sister-in-law now? Is it serious?" When Yi Qianqian heard that, she laughed angrily. "So, you still know that she's your sister-in-law? Do you know what your sister-in-law has just gone through? Do you know what your good brother told me? Why is there such a big gap between the Shun family? Tell me, I think you're still a decent person, but why is your brother like this? Bah, scum, bastard, beast, scumbag." The more Yi Qianqian scolded him, the more fervent she became. In the end, she was so angry that she stomped her foot and yelled, "I'm so angry." Shun Julia was baffled by the scolding, but at the same time, he found Yi Qianqian inexplicably adorable. He couldn't help but burst out laughing. Unexpectedly, it made Yi Qianqian even more displeased. "What are you laughing at, you beast? You're not a good thing either. Hey. It's one thing for you to scold my brother, but what you're doing is implicating the innocent." "What did I do? You've wronged me," Shun Julia shouted. "What happened? How is my sister-in-law doing?" Yi Qianqian angrily recounted everything that Yu Yu had said to her, as well as Shun Luo's attitude toward her. The more she spoke, the angrier she became. She was on the verge of scratching the wall. When Shun Julia heard that, he coughed lightly and said, "My brother didn't particularly like my sister-in-law to begin with, so therefore he was not surprised at all that she would say such a thing." Chapter 1234. What she said, Shun Luo, and was his brother. Shun Julia felt that she was scolding him when he heard her scolding him so righteously. However, Shun Julia couldn't say a word. After all, Shun Luo didn't treat Yu Yu very well. Yes. Don't be angry. How is she now?" Shun Julia quickly changed the topic to Yi Yu. After they chatted for a while, Shun Julia hung up the phone. Yu Lily clearly saw Shun Julia breathe a sigh of relief when he hung up the phone. The table was full of dishes, and old Mrs. Shun ate them with relish. Now the four of them were sitting at a small round table, facing each other. Yu Lily and old Mrs. Shun sat on one side, and Ming and Shun Julia sat on the other. Old Mrs. Shun was eating when she noticed that Shun Julia had hung up the phone. She asked, "How is the girl now? She seems to have a concussion, and her hand is fractured, but it's not particularly serious. She should be discharged in a few days." "How could it be so serious? Isn't she a big star? Isn't she just filming all day? Why is she in such danger?" "Grandma, it's not that simple. Don't those big stars always fly around the mountain? They all need to hang a wire. This time, sister-in-law accidentally fell from the wire, and that's why she was injured." Shun Julia put food in the old lady's bowl and said, "Nothing is easy." "Oh." Old Mrs. Shun ate and asked, "Where is she? Did your brother go?" "Yes. He paid the medical fees and left." Shun Julia also heard it from Yi Qianqian. He felt a little sympathy for Yi Yu. When old Mrs. Shun heard this, she sighed and said, "What a sin. Isn't it a sin?" Yi Yu was injured, but Shun Luo only paid the medical fees and left. Moreover, the capital was only a 2-hour drive from H City, but he waited until noon the next day. Yu Lily didn't know about their family affairs, so she didn't interrupt. She put some food in Ming's bowl and lowered her head to eat in silence. Juliet clearly saw Lily's actions, and his eyes were a little sad. This woman still couldn't let go of Ming, right? No matter how Ming treated her, there was only one man in her heart. Juliet felt a little frustrated. He also picked up a few chopsticks and put them in Ming's bowl. He said, "Eat more. Don't be picky. I'll take you back to Kingstown after eating." Ming didn't say anything. He pretended not to notice Juliet's deliberate behavior. He picked up his chopsticks and continued eating. "Is her hand better?" Lily asked. Ming's hand, which was holding the chopsticks, paused for a moment. He quickly put down the chopsticks, spread out his palm, and said, "It hurts. I think I have a blister." When Lily looked over, Juliet felt displeased. He reached out and slapped Ming's hand away. "Eat your food. You're a big man. What's the point of being sentimental? It's fine as long as you can use it." Ming curled his lips and said, "You're jealous." "Jealous my ass. Let's eat." Juliet shoved his chopsticks into Ming's hands. He was extremely unhappy. Chapter 1235. Ming had already expected this. Juliet couldn't wait to send him away. When he heard this, Ming wasn't surprised at all. Ming calmly sat where he was and said, "Actually, someone has already come to pick me up. You can ask Ruashin to contact Uncle Wen. Since they're here to pick you up, why would they contact Lily? Can't you contact them yourself?" Juliet clearly didn't believe him. "I don't remember his number. I don't have a phone," Ming said matter-of-factly. When Juliet heard that, he looked at Ming with a faint smile. He picked up his phone and sent a text to Lily right in front of Ming. Ming said he wanted to contact Uncle Wen. "Send me Uncle Wen's phone number." When Lily saw that, she didn't suspect anything and immediately sent the number over. When Ming saw this, he had a new understanding of this. This fellow was so cunning. After Juliet called Wen Fenglin, he handed the phone to Ming. Ming took it and called out, "Uncle Wen, Xiao, how are you getting along with Lily?" "It's pretty good, but Uncle Wen, where are you now?" "I'll let Lily take me to you, and then we'll go back to Kingstown together." "Oh, that's good." Wen Fenglin gave them the address. It was at the Art Association in N City. After hanging up the phone, Ming could clearly sense Juliet's displeasure, but he still pretended not to know and said, "Call Lily and ask her to take me there." "I'll take you there. My grandmother likes Lily very much. Let them play for a while longer." "Yes, I can see that your grandmother is planning to change her surname from Yu to Shun, right? Take her in as an adopted granddaughter or something?" "Of course not. Even if you change your surname, it will be recorded in my household register." The meaning of these words couldn't be any clearer. However, when Ming heard that, he laughed and said, "It should be noon now, right? Are you sleepwalking?" Juliet's eyes turned cold. "Just wait and see. Lily won't choose you again. Sooner or later, I'll deal with her. Can you handle it?" Ming raised his eyebrows. His eyes were unfocused as he looked ahead, but his smile was bright. Juliet decided to ignore him. He stood up and left. She had no intention of taking Ming with her. Ming pretended not to know and sat in the same place, listening to the movements around him. "Just wait, Lily will be back." Juliet was digging his own grave by leaving a blind man like him there. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, Juliet returned with an angry look on his face and demanded, "Why didn't you follow me? What did you leave?" When Juliet heard this rhetorical question, he didn't know what to say. The sound of light footsteps came from behind him. It was very familiar. Juliet turned around. It was Lily. When she saw Juliet, she said, "Grandma is alone in the room. You go and keep her company. I'll take him to Uncle Wen." Juliet nodded and said, "Yes, Grandma is alone in the room." "So, they still had to be alone? How could this be?" Juliet quickly said, "I'll go with you. You stay here with Grandma. I'll bring him to the Art Association to find Uncle Wen. I'll be back soon." Lily looked at Juliet and said, "Grandma is getting on in years, so it's better that she doesn't follow us around. I just told Grandma that I would bring a cake back. You can bring a piece back. I'm leaving now." Chapter 1236. When Shun Juliet saw that, he felt even more depressed. He stepped forward to stop Eulili and said, "Wait a minute. Huh? Remember to give me a call if anything happens." "Okay." Eulili smiled. She held Oming's hand and walked forward. She patted Shun Juliet on the shoulder and said, "Nothing will happen. If there's anything I can't handle, I'll give you a call immediately." "Okay, but if this guy bullies you, don't hold back. Beat him up." "Yes, yes, yes." Eulili held Oming's hand and walked forward. She turned her head and waved at Shun Juliet. After they left the hotel, Eulili flagged down a taxi. She shoved Oming in and got in herself. Shun Juliet was still watching from behind. Eulili waved until he was out of sight. She then retracted her hand. Oming pulled her over and fell on top of her. "You're still waving. Even if I wasn't blind, I'd be blinded." Eulili pushed him away in disgust and said, "You're so heavy. Get lost." "Is it heavy?" Oming immediately straightened up and pulled her over. "Then you can lean on me." Eulili was still annoyed and asked, "After you go look for Uncle One, are you going back to Kingstown?" "No. Uncle One still has things to do at the art association. They're old friends who haven't seen each other in decades. They must have a lot to talk about. We'll just find a comfortable hotel nearby to stay. Let's go together." "That's not a good idea. I just told Shinjulia that I'm going back." "Tell him that you're not going back." "That won't do. Won't they know that we're back together again?" "It's good that you're back together. It's not the first time we've gotten back together. What's there to be afraid of?" Oming appeared very calm. He held her with one arm. "That guy is still daydreaming. It's best that you clear things up with him. If he thinks he has a chance and pesters you, you'll know that you're in trouble." "No way. Shinjulia is not stupid." Eulili pinched his nose. "But when are you going to be honest? Everyone thinks that you're not over yet. What will you do when they find out?" "Once my mother is settled, everything will be fine." Oming hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. "I want you to be a legitimate member of our family. I want my mother to have nothing to say." Eulili touched her face and saw the driver's ambiguous gaze. She blushed and pushed Oming. "There's someone else here." Oming was even more presumptuous. He nibbled on her face and said, "Uncle Driver is an experienced man. He's already used to it." Eulili blushed and pushed him away with both hands and feet. Oming laughed and stopped teasing her. He let go of her and said, "Does Shun Julia's grandmother like you very much?" "It seems so. I don't know why, but I've unwittingly become friends with her." Eulili was in a passive position when it came to this friendship that spanned generations. "Why are you suddenly asking about this?" "I was thinking, since she likes you so much, you can ask her for help." "What?" Oming did not answer. He turned to look at Eulili and said, "I sent someone to investigate your background. After nearly half a year, I finally found some clues." Eulili was stunned. "What clues?" Chapter 12:37. Hearing that, Eulili held her breath and looked at Oming in disbelief. "You found her 25 years ago. There were no closed roads everywhere near the orphanage. It was very difficult to find an abandoned baby in a situation where no one saw it. It went without saying how difficult it was. But Oming could find her." "Yes, I found her." Oming reached out and gently touched her cheek. "She's doing well." "Is it the woman who gave birth to me?" In other words, it was her mother. Was it her mother? The word mother was too far away from Eulili. It was too far away. She had never said that word since she was a child. She thought that such a person should have died long ago. She didn't expect that Oming would find her. Oming could clearly sense Eulili's emotional turmoil. He gently stroked her head and said, "Yes, but she's not your mother." "How could it be? Since she gave birth to me, who else could she be but my mother?" Eulili was a little emotional and shouted, "Shoo!" Oming pointed to the driver in front and said, "Don't get excited. Listen to me slowly." "Go ahead." Although Eulili said that, she was not calm at all. She held Oming's hand tightly with both of her hands, which undoubtedly revealed her nervousness. "She is the woman who gave birth to you, but she is not your biological mother. You have no blood relationship with her at all." "What do you mean?" Eulili felt a little difficult to digest. "How could it be? She's a surrogate mother. Back then, she helped someone else give birth to you. That is to say, she helped your biological mother give birth to you, and she just lent your mother a belly. Surrogate mother? Isn't that illegal? At that time, it was not illegal. Oming tapped her forehead. The woman refused to tell you the specific situation. She wanted you to see her in person. She wants me to see her in person? Where is she now? In F County. She's the mother of 2 children now. They're both older than you. You're her last child. After you were born, your biological mother didn't come to look for you. With her living conditions, it was impossible for her to raise a child who was less than a month old. Oming stroked her hair and continued. Back then, the cold wave was very strong, and F County was just a small village. There were originally 3 children, but 1 froze to death. Was that why he had abandoned her? The year she was born, the cold wave had indeed frightened many people. It was a rare snowy day in 100 years, yet she managed to survive. What about my biological parents? Where are they? Lily couldn't tell what she was feeling. At this moment, she was sad, and even looking forward to it. What were they expecting? All these years, her biological parents had never appeared, nor had they raised her for a day, nor had they fed her a mouthful of milk. Now that she had survived all by herself, did it matter whether they appeared or not? And now, she was actually looking forward to them. Chapter 1238. I don't know. All I know is that you're not that woman's child. I used your hair to do a DNA test, and it's confirmed that you're not. Lily was a little disappointed, but she knew the implications and didn't say another word. Let's go take a look together after we're done with my mother. Lily nodded her head. She still had many thoughts about her biological parents. The taxi stopped very quickly. Lily paid the fare and got out of the car. She walked shoulder to shoulder with Oming to the place when Feng Lin had mentioned. The Art Association. Any artist would want to enter a place to record their name. Lily was no exception. Looking at the grand entrance, Lily's heart was filled with longing. Everyone wanted to come to a good place. She called when Feng Lin. He was chatting and drinking tea inside. When he received the call, he immediately came out and led the 2 of them inside. When they entered, they realized that there were many people inside. Lily didn't like such occasions, but Oming seemed to know many people there. As soon as he entered, many people recognized him and shouted, Lil O. It's really Xiao O. What happened to your hand? What happened to your eyes? Oming was still pretending to be blind. After all, the elders in front of him were old friends with Xiao Ziqing and Ohuajing. The circle was only so big. If word got out, he couldn't continue pretending in front of Xiao Ziqing. The group of elders greeted Oming's colleagues and didn't forget to tease Lily. Lily was afraid that Oming would give himself away, so she quickly found an excuse and said that she wanted to leave. Wait a minute. A young voice called out to Oming and Lily. Since you're here, let's sit together. My father isn't here yet. She turned around and saw a young man in his early 20s. His features weren't outstanding, but he had a clean demeanor. When Feng Lin quickly stepped forward to smooth things over. Xiao O isn't feeling well. He should be taking a break now. Lily's handling of such an occasion was a little awkward. It was obvious that she wasn't used to such occasions. When Feng Lin could tell at a glance. He couldn't allow her to stay any longer. However, Zhenli didn't want to let them off. He looked at Lily and said, I think this lady looks familiar. I wonder if we've met before? When Lily heard that, she felt a little embarrassed. When Oming heard that, his face darkened. He pulled Lily aside and said, You haven't seen her, have you? I've never brought her here. Oming's hostility was so obvious that Zhen Li's face immediately became hot. He said, I didn't mean that. I really felt that she looked a little familiar. I wasn't trying to hit on her. Lily also felt that Oming's reaction was too much. She pulled him back and reached out to pat him. In a low voice, she said, Speak properly. This was the place that Uncle Wen had brought them to. What if they embarrassed Uncle Wen? Lily looked at Zhen Li with a smile and said, Perhaps you've seen the news some time ago. My relationship with Oming was quite a hit recently. You must have seen my photo. Zhen Li nodded. Was that so? However, Zhen Li felt that it shouldn't be so simple, but he just couldn't remember where he had seen it before. Chapter 1239. That should be the case. Yu Lily smiled and pressed Ming's hand down. I'll take Ming to rest first. Okay. Zhenli nodded his head and watched them leave. After sending Yu Lily and Ming off, Zhenli couldn't sit still any longer. After saying goodbye to Wen Fenglin, he quickly drove back home. Zhen Xianlang had just arrived home. He had intended to take a good rest and leave everything to his son. He hadn't expected Zhenli to return home as well. When he sensed his son's return, Zhen Xianlang was clearly unhappy. In a stern voice, he asked, "Why are you back? Did you leave the people from the art association behind?" "I asked Uncle Wen to help me take a look." Ming said, "Dad, can you show me the photo you showed me before?" "What photo?" "It's the photo of your wife before you marry my mother." After Yu Lily led Ming out, Ming quickly grabbed her hand. His footsteps were quick, and he looked unhappy. "Wait a minute. Why are you walking so fast?" Yu Lily's steps were a little shaky. She couldn't keep up. "Uncle Wen is still there. Did you talk to him?" "No." Ming's face was stern. He turned to look at Yu Lily and said, "That man was obviously hitting on you, and you smiled at him. That's Uncle Wen's nephew, and he didn't mean any harm. He just wanted to greet me. He doesn't look like those hooligans outside. There's such a big art association there, and my boyfriend is there too. He couldn't have meant it that way." "Who said that?" Ming's face was cold. "I think he thought I couldn't see, so he wanted to develop a relationship with you." As he said that, he pointed at Yu Lily's head and gritted his teeth. Why don't you use your brain to think about what's going on? That man obviously had ill intentions toward you. You're thinking too much. I know my own looks. It's impossible that any random man would be interested in me." Ming almost couldn't help but curse, but he held it in and said, "In any case, if you see that man in the future, you have to stay away from him. Don't smile at him and don't get close to him. Do you hear me?" Yes. Yu Lily didn't know what to do with him. "What are we going to do now? What time is it?" 3 o'clock. "Let's go boating," Ming said with a smile. "Rowing?" Yu Lily looked at his hand. "Are you sure?" "Well, you row, I'll sit." "Not going." "Let's go." "Not going." "Let's go." Yu Lily bought some snacks and went to buy a ticket. She led Ming onto the boat and started rowing with the oars. Ming, on the other hand, was stepping on the boat. The two of them sat face to face. Ming was not happy. He waved at her and said, "Come here." "No, we can't. The boat will tip over." "I won't." "Yes." "I said I won't, so I won't." Yu Lily rolled her eyes at him. "If I go over, we'll capsize and die together. Shall I sit over there?" As he spoke, he was about to move. Yu Lily jumped in fright and shouted, "Sit down." "Don't move." Ming stopped what he was doing. He pursed his lips and waved at her. "Come here. You don't have to sit here." Chapter 1240. Yu Lily blinked her eyes and subconsciously looked around. There were several small boats nearby. Some of them were shared by their best friends, while others were couples like them. There were also families of 3 that came together. Perhaps they saw it, and many people looked over. Yu Lily's face became hotter and hotter. She wanted to push him away, but Ming held her face and sucked harder. "Let go." Yu Lily slapped him in embarrassment. Ming let go of her hand and continued to paddle the boat as if nothing had happened. Yu Lily felt the stares from all directions, and her face became redder. She lowered her head and didn't dare to raise it. Ming was very calm and said, "Look, the 2 ducks behind you are so cute." Yu Lily turned her head and saw 2 little guys swimming together. They had green necks and white feathers. "What ducks?" "Those are mandarin ducks." "Oh, so those are mandarin ducks." Ming smiled. "That's amazing." For some reason, Yu Lily felt that his words had a deeper meaning. After glaring at him, she turned her face away and rowed the boat, determined not to look at him. When she turned her head, she inadvertently saw a couple sitting together. The woman was sitting on the man's lap, hugging each other. They were very close, and they were smiling sweetly and brightly. But then, the 2 of them were hugging and kissing, and the man's hand was still on the woman's chest. Yu Lily blushed. The moral degeneration of the world was getting worse day by day. These 2 people were too bold, but she had to admit that such a handsome man and beautiful woman were very pleasing to the eye. Unknowingly, Yu Lily found Oh Ming leaning over and asked, "What are you looking at?" Yu Lily turned her head and was kissed on the cheek by Oh Ming. Yu Lily shrank her neck and shook her head, but she couldn't help looking in that direction. The two of them were no longer kissing, but the hand was still on her chest. "TSK, you're not being honest." Oh Ming leaned over and kissed her lips. "Let's go ashore." "So soon?" Yu Lily looked at the time. "We've been here for less than half an hour." "Well, I don't think rowing is fun. Let's go for a walk." "A walk?" Yu Lily felt a little relieved. This guy hated walking the most. In his words, such a boring activity was a waste of life. Instead of walking, it was better to work. Now, because he was injured, because he was blind, he could justifiably rest and stop working. Yu Lily smiled and nodded. "Let's go." When they reached the shore, Yu Lily held Oh Ming's hand and walked around the park. It was a unique building with a Minnan style. It was antique, and the surrounding greenery was done very well. Most importantly, there were many couples walking around. Not long after the new year, many young couples hadn't started school yet. Of course, the park had become the first choice for dating. Along the way, there were all kinds of couples. Some were in love, some were laughing, and some were fooling around. It was very lively. Yu Lily was a little envious and looked at those couples. Oh Ming held her in his arms with one hand. He lowered his head and whispered, "What's with that expression? He looks so envious." Chapter 1241. Yu Lily turned her head and looked at him. Especially when she saw his slightly evil features, she couldn't help but raise the corner of her mouth. She said with some disgust, "What's so good about you? They're better looking." "Really?" Oh Ming narrowed his eyes. In his deep peach blossom eyes, evil began to overflow unscrupulously. "Maybe others say the same. Come on, let's do it for others to see." As he said that, his hand touched Yu Lily's head as if he was going to kiss her. Yu Lily's lips curled into a smile. She took a step back and said, "Go away. Are you trying to be a hooligan in broad daylight?" Oh Ming didn't realize that he was being despised. He raised his eyebrows and took a step forward. "That's not the way to be a hooligan. Come on, let me teach you." "Go away." Yu Lily smiled and stepped back, but Oh Ming was obviously a little faster. He took a step forward, grabbed her with one hand, and bent over to hold her in his arms. Yu Lily turned her head and saw Oh Ming looking at her gently. A pair of peach blossom eyes were like a gurgling spring, sparkling and soft like a sea of flowers. When Yu Lily saw such a pair of eyes, she suddenly felt very lucky. Fortunately, he can see. Such a pair of beautiful eyes. Such a pair of eyes that make people's hearts beat. If it was really like a few days ago, it would be such a pity. When he looked at her with such a pair of eyes, Yu Lily could not help but feel the love coming from him all the time. In fact, sometimes he was just a little bit of a mouth. Yu Lily turned her head and leaned forward, standing on her tiptoes to get close to his lips. Oh Ming thought she was going to kiss him, so he leaned forward. Unexpectedly, Yu Lily had moved closer, but the moment she opened her mouth, she bit down hard on his lip. Oh Ming frowned. Just as he was about to recover, Yu Lily bit him again. "Why did you bite me?" Oh Ming felt inexplicable. He raised his eyebrows slightly and lowered his head with a low laugh. "Is it because of Xin Xing's flirting method?" "No." Yu Lily shook her head and looked at him with a smile. "It's just because you have a dirty mouth." Oh Ming was speechless. Before he could say anything, Yu Lily held his face in her hands and kissed him on the lips. The gloominess of being mocked and scolded disappeared without a trace. Yu Lily kissed him again and licked his lips gently with her tongue. He raised his hand to touch her head. He moved his lips forward and acted as if he wanted more. However, more and more people were looking at them. Yu Lily immediately pushed him away and whispered, "You're acting like a hooligan." When Oh Ming heard that, he was slightly stunned. But soon he laughed softly. Flirting and not being satisfied. Wasn't this the same as acting like a rogue? Seeing Yu Lily running away with a smile, Oh Ming immediately chased after her. "Stop right there." Yu Lily ran even faster. She turned around and waved at Oh Ming. "Come on, let's go eat." Oh Ming was a little puzzled, but when he saw her bright and beautiful smile, his mood naturally soared. His eyes turned into crescents as he chased after Yulili. Wait for me. Why are you so slow when you're so tall? Oming was puzzled. Yulili couldn't do anything else, but she could run faster than anyone else. Your legs are so long. Why are you so slow? Chapter 1242. Oming's voice wasn't soft. There were many people walking around them. When they heard Oming's words, those who knew what was going on looked at them suspiciously. Yulili's face heated up. She quickly covered it and found a corner to hide. I'm going to die. How shameless of him to say something like that in front of so many people. Fortunately, the gazes around them only lingered for a moment before quickly turning away. Oming walked up to her and held her hand proudly as he asked, Didn't you say we were going out for dinner? What are we going to eat? What can you eat? Your hand is already like this. You should eat something high in protein. Seafood. Okay. She looked at the time. It was only evening. Near the park, there was no lack of restaurants. It was also close to the seafood market, so there were many places to eat seafood. The two of them walked slowly, shoulder to shoulder. After walking for about 10 minutes, they arrived at a seafood restaurant. They booked a private room. Just as they were about to order, Yulili received a call from Wenfenglin. Uncle Wen. Yulili held out her cell phone for him to see. She answered the call and called out, Uncle Wen. Hey, Lily, where did you and Oming go? We're preparing to eat. Have you eaten? Oh, I see. I was going to call you out to eat together. Where are you now? Yulili quickly gave him the name of the restaurant. Unexpectedly, Wenfenglin seemed surprised and said, What a coincidence. We're here too. Why don't you come over and join us? Which room are you in? When Yulili heard that, she knew something was amiss. She turned her head to look at Oming and said, Uncle Wen is here too. He asked us to join him for dinner. Oming furrowed his brows and shook his head gently at him. If Wenfenglin had been alone, he wouldn't have had any objections. But it was obvious that Uncle Wen wasn't alone. With such a large group of people together, it was inevitable that they would have to drink and socialize. He wasn't there to do such a thing. When Yulili saw that, she knew what was going on. She said into the phone, Forget it, Uncle Wen. Oming hasn't fully recovered yet. We shouldn't go and spoil your fun. It doesn't matter. There are only 3 of us, and there are only 5 of you. We'll go back after eating. We won't drink or socialize. Don't be afraid. Wenfenglin's voice was filled with ridicule as he asked, Which room are you in? Shall I bring you over? It just so happens that you're also a painter, so it's not a bad thing for us to meet. In all fairness, Uncle Wen treated him very well. Since he had already put it that way, Yulili would feel bad if she tried to turn him down again. In the end, he relented and reported the room number. He reached out and pinched Yulili's face and said, I'm tired of pretending. Do you know that? Yulili was a little embarrassed and smiled apologetically. I forgot. Oming had an urge to strangle her. Soon, Wenfenglin arrived at the scene. When he saw the 2 young people, his mood lifted significantly. He said, What a coincidence. Let's go. They're all waiting for you. There were many people, but it wasn't easy to accept. When Oming saw Zhenli, his face darkened. Chapter 1243. The moment she entered, Yulili saw Zhenli. Beside Zhenli sat a middle-aged man who looked to be about the same age as Wenfenglin. Yulili wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but the moment she entered, she felt the middle-aged man's gaze land on her. His gaze seemed to be probing, doubtful, and nostalgic. The complicated emotions made Yulili look over as well. She was a little confused. Before Yulili could confirm anything, the middle-aged man's gaze quickly shifted away. Come, let me introduce you. Wenfenglin let Oming and Yulili take their seats before he started speaking with a smile. This is Xiao Jiao's son. Zhenli has probably met him before. His name is Oming. This is Oming's girlfriend, Yulili. Zhenli smiled and extended his hand toward Yulili. Hello, miss you. I'm Zhenli. Just as Yulili was about to extend her hand to shake Zhenli's, she could clearly feel a cold aura emanating from beside her. But her hand was already extended halfway. If she retracted it, wouldn't that be too deliberate? How could Uncle Wen keep his face after this? Eulili had no choice but to bite the bullet and extend her hand. After shaking Zhun Li's hand gently, she immediately retracted it. She reached out and gently squeezed Ming's hand. The smile on her face faded. As for Ming, he had already switched to playing blind. Since he couldn't see anything, there was no need for him to care. How could Fenglin not see through Ming's intentions? He didn't care and introduced the other person besides Zhun Li to Eulili. This is the chairman of the province's art association, Zhun Xianlang. He used to be a good friend of mine. We haven't seen each other for many years. We only met this year when Fenglin introduced. Zhun Xianlang and Zhun Li looked alike. One look, and anyone could tell that they were father and son. However, Zhun Xianlang's facial features were more amiable than Fenglin's. He looked more capable. His eyes were big, bright, and full of expression, and he looked sharp and capable. "Hello." Zhun Xianlang extended his hand toward Eulili and said, "Miss Yu is really beautiful. Xiao O is really lucky to have found such a beautiful girlfriend." It was obviously a polite greeting to change the topic to Ming. Everyone present knew that Ming's expression softened when he heard that. So be it. It was better than pestering his woman and refusing to let go. Ming curled his lips and nodded. "My luck is not bad. She doesn't despise me even though I'm like this. This must be true love." It was obvious teasing, but in reality, it was a show of force. Zhun Li was a smart person. He replied with a smile, "Isn't that so? This is true love." Zhun Xianlang couldn't help but laugh. He quickly changed the topic and exchanged a few words with Ming. Lily and Xianlang and Shan. From time to time, Zhun Xianlang and Zhun Li would talk to Ming. Eulili sat to the side and occasionally helped Ming peel the shells of prawns and pick up fish fillets. She didn't interrupt their conversation. Ming, they were talking, but they Li and said the topic, as and when Zhun and was. One and Yuli and, as Zhun Lilzhen and Ming Zhun Ming, said Li. Chapter 1244. What she wanted to say was suddenly interrupted. Eulili stretched out her elbow and nudged Ming. When Zhun Li and Zhun Xianlang heard that, they looked at each other. Zhun Xianlang looked at Fenglin and said with a smile, "I see. To be honest, I find Miss Yu a little familiar. What do you think, Lao Wen?" Fenglin was in the middle of eating when he heard that. His heart skipped a beat. He thinks so, too. How could that be? This is the first time they've met. He maintained his composure on the surface and turned to look at Eulili. He pretended to scrutinize her for a moment and nodded his head. "She does look a little familiar. Does she look like Sienna?" Sienna. Eulili was no stranger to that name. Old Mrs. Shun had also mentioned that she looked like Sienna, but it wasn't the physical resemblance. It was the charm. Eulili lowered her head awkwardly when she heard Zhun Xianlang's words. She smiled and asked, "So you know Sienna as well?" Zhun Xianlang was surprised and asked, "You know her?" "Yeah, I've heard Uncle Wen mention her before. I've also heard a grandmother mention her. She also said that I look a little like Sienna." "I guess so. But who's the grandmother you're talking about?" "Sienna's aunt. Old Shen's half-fairy," Fenglin replied. When Zhun Xianlang heard that, he knew who it was. He smiled and lowered his head in shame. "Sienna is my wife." "Wife?" Eulili was stunned. She looked at Fenglin. "Isn't Sienna Fenglin's lover?" According to old Mrs. Shun, Sienna's health isn't very good. Shouldn't she be unable to get married? How could she have such an old child? Zhun Li looks to be at least 21 or 22 years old. Fenglin looked over at the same time and smiled. His two deep dimples were embedded in his cheeks. They were deep and beautiful. He looked at her with a deep gaze. It was as if he was looking at her, but it was also as if he was looking at someone else. "Sienna has passed away." Eulili knew that and nodded her head. But she didn't know what to say. After thinking for a while, he asked, "I heard from Grandmother Shun that Aunt Sienna doesn't seem to be in good health." "Yes, her health wasn't very good," Zhun Xianlang replied. He looked at Eulili with a hint of loneliness and said, "When she passed away, I was studying in the north. I didn't even get to see her one last time." When Fenglin heard that, He seemed to have thought of something and laughed mirthlessly. You were in the north at that time. Why didn't you bring her over? When Jin Xianling heard that, he looked Wen Fenglin in the eye and sighed. You're still blaming me, Wen Fenglin choked on his words. He looked away and coldly said, I have no right to blame you. I can only blame myself. There was a story. The relationship between these two elders was not shallow. Yu Lily's mind instantly conjured up a drama. Wen Fenglin was a poor boy who fell in love with Xian Er, the daughter of a wealthy family. Because he was too poor, the girl's family objected. Later, Xian Er was forced to marry Zhang Li's father, who was rich and powerful. Wasn't it said that Xian Er's health wasn't good enough to bear a child? In other words, Zhang Li's father ignored Xian Er's health and forced her to bear a child for him. That was why Xian Er died. Chapter 1245. Therefore, when Uncle Wen introduced Zhang Li's father to her, just now, he said, my good friend, instead of my good friend. This was the difference, right? Yu Lily seemed to have figured out the cause and effect of all this, and she also understood their current feelings. Because of a woman, good friends would not turn against each other, but they would gradually drift apart. There was a dead man between the two brothers. However, Zhang Li's father still had a child left behind by that woman. As for Uncle Wen, he had nothing. For so many years, he had been alone. Even as a bystander, Yu Lily felt some sympathy for him. She was so engrossed in her thoughts that she didn't even hear when Uncle Wen called out to her. Oming pulled her gently and asked, Are you full? Yu Lily calmed down and nodded. Yes, I'm full. Let's go. All right. Yu Lily stood up and realized that the atmosphere was strangely awkward. What happened? Yu Lily was very curious, but she had to be distracted at this time. Seeing that Uncle Wen and Oming had both stood up, she lowered her head, took Oming's hand, and walked forward. However, he could not help but turn to look at Zhang Xianling curiously. This elder seemed to be looking at her differently. Could it be that he really treated her like Xian? Feeling a little awkward, Yu Lily quickly followed Oming out. When they were outside, Wen Fenglin looked at Yu Lily and said with a smile, That guy is just like that. You do look a little like Xian. If I didn't know that Xian had never given birth to a child, I would have thought that you were her daughter. Xian didn't give birth? Not having children and not being able to have children were two different concepts. Yu Lily looked at Wen Fenglin strangely and asked, How could that be? Wasn't that Zhang Li just now Xian child? Wen Fenglin shook his head. No, the child is only in his early 20s. As for Xian she passed away 24 or 25 years ago. 24 or 25 years ago. Isn't that about the same age as Yu Lily? Yu Lily's heart suddenly beat faster, and she subconsciously looked at Oming. Oming's expression seemed to change a little, but it didn't change much at the moment. Yu Lily thought for a moment and asked, Uncle Wen, do you have a photo of Auntie Sienna? Everyone was saying that they looked alike, but Yu Lily had never even seen a photo of them. When Wen Fenglin heard that, he immediately understood. Why? Are you finally curious? Yu Lily nodded her head. Yeah, I heard from Granny Shun that we don't really look alike. At least, you can't tell at first glance, but yes, the more we get to know each other, the more similar I feel. As he spoke, Wen Fenglin took out his leather armor and carefully took out a photo that had already been molded. The photo was in black and white. The pixels back then didn't seem to be very high. Even the facial features on his face were blurry. However, the photo was well preserved. The woman in the photo was gentle and beautiful with a peaceful smile. But at first glance, Yu Lily felt a sense of familiarity with him. Like Chapter 1246. Surrogacy. 24 to 25 years ago, how did any Xian die? Yu Lily asked as she handed the photo back to him. As soon as she asked the question, she immediately realized that it wasn't a good question. Indeed, Wen Fenglin smiled. There was a hint of sadness in his smile. Xian body was on the cold side, and she was naturally afraid of the cold. Fortunately, our family conditions weren't too bad, and we managed to raise her until she was 20. But in order to be with me, She secretly went to the small house I was renting to look for me in the middle of a snowy day. When Fenglin paused for a moment, he sounded remorseful. Perhaps she was frozen. We stayed in the small house for 2 days. On the third day, Xian Er's body started to feel unwell. 2 words immediately appeared in Lily's mind: elopement. In those days, elopement was a very serious matter. I was a poor student at the time. I was full of ideals and aspirations, but my finances were tight. I searched everywhere for medicine, but Xian Er's health didn't improve. So, I sent her back. When Lily heard the first part of the story, she had already guessed what had happened. But when she heard the second part, her heart couldn't help but turn cold. How big of a decision did a rich young lady like her have to make before she decided to leave with you? But this man who had decided to follow her for the rest of his life had sent her back within a few days. What did that girl think? Just thinking about it made Lily feel sorry for the girl. When Fenglin saw the expression on Lily's face, he could roughly guess what she was thinking. With a bitter laugh, he asked, "Do you also think that what I did wasn't right?" Lily saw the bitter expression on Fenglin's face. She hesitated for a moment before nodding her head. "I also wanted to keep her by my side, but my circumstances weren't good enough. Xian was a very good girl. She shouldn't have suffered with me. She shouldn't have followed me. Even the most basic of health wasn't guaranteed." Fenglin's small eyes were filled with sadness. "If she followed me, she wouldn't have had any protection. We weren't from the same world at all." When she heard that, Lily found it familiar. "We weren't from the same world." The anger in her heart flared up. The way he looked at Fenglin had changed. "So, if you send her back, will she be able to live well?" He thought he was doing it for the good of women, but was it really true? They claimed that it was for her own good, but in reality, it was just because of their selfishness that they did not want to bear that responsibility. Lily gritted her teeth. She liked you so much that she ignored her family's objections to be with a single man like you. Her reputation was ruined, but you sent her back. Fenglin was silent for a long time before he said, "I'm also her murderer. You're the murderer who killed her." Lily's words were merciless. "You men are so full of yourself. What you think is good for her, is it really good for her? How naive." Lily was exasperated. What happened after that? She married that young guy? Yes. Lily's conjecture was completely overturned. She had thought that Uncle Wen had no choice but to do this because of Xian Er's parents' objection. She had never imagined that it was all Uncle Wen's own doing. Chapter 1247. You're really muddle-headed. Lily gritted her teeth and growled. Her heart was filled with disappointment. This was the first time in Fenglin's life that he had been lectured by such a young girl. He didn't feel embarrassed. Instead, he felt even more guilty and remorseful. Xian Er's family started a timber business after the founding of the People's Republic. They were very influential in Ji province at the time, and they doted on their only daughter to the core. At that time, the Zhen family was a good match for them, and they had already set up an engagement. In other words, he was the so-called third party. Sigh. Lily was infuriated just listening to it, but she didn't know what else to say. Wealthy families were particular about a good match. Just look at Ming's mother. That kind of prejudice had existed since ancient times. How could it be easy to change that? But, looking at Fenglin's current situation, she couldn't help but feel sorry for her gentle uncle. Ming gently patted Lily's shoulder with his large, gentle hand. His eyes were unfocused, but his voice was steady as he asked, "Uncle Wen, where are you staying? Let's go back to Kingstown tomorrow. We've been here for a few days already." When Fenglin knew that Ming was trying to give him a way out of this embarrassing situation, he smiled and nodded his head. "All right, let's go. We'll go back together tomorrow. Which hotel are you staying at?" Lily told him the name of the hotel. It was a little far from where Fenglin was staying, but it was on the way. They hailed a cab and returned to the hotel together. On the way, no one spoke first. Lily's mind was filled with countless possibilities. If Fenglin had been more insistent and not sent Xian Er back, but had treated her himself, would the outcome have been different? What if Xian Er's body wasn't as weak as they had imagined? If Xian hadn't married Jin Xianling. Would she have gone back to Wenfenglin after she was cured? The more Yu Lili thought about it, the worse she felt. Xian was dead, and Wenfenglin had been alone for more than 20 years. The man that Xian had chosen in the end had chosen another man, and they had even given birth to a child. Zhen Xianlong's actions made Wenfenglin feel particularly desolate. How hateful! However, Yu Lili also knew that her complaints were unreasonable. How could a man remain single for the rest of his life for a woman who had someone else in her heart? The Zhen family was a large family, and he had his responsibilities. When Wenfenglin arrived first, after getting out of the car, Ming leaned over and asked in a low voice, "What are you thinking about?" Yu Lili shook her head, a little annoyed. When she returned to the hotel, she realized that her phone had been switched off. No wonder it was so quiet. He charged his phone and turned it on. There were more than a dozen missed calls. Shun Jilia. Ming watched from afar. He looked at Yu Lili with a faint smile and asked, "Aren't you going to call him back?" Looking at his expression, Yu Lili knew that he was up to no good. She knew Shun. We master. Can F. Chapter 1248. Yu Lili had just been dragged into the bathroom when she heard her cell phone ringing outside. It was undoubtedly Shun Jilia who was calling at this time. This made Yu Lili naturally think of what had happened in the hotel room last night. Her face unconsciously turned red. She looked up and met Ming's eyes. Ming's eyes were filled with playfulness and ambiguity. He pulled her over and whispered, "Why is your face so red? What are you thinking of?" Yu Lili glared at him and didn't answer. She pulled her hand back and said, "I'm going to answer the phone." "Answer the phone?" Ming raised his eyebrows. There was some pride in his eyes. He immediately smiled and said, "You don't want to take a bath? You go fill the tub. I'll help you bathe later. Together. Why do you have to leave me behind?" Ming pulled her, but he didn't go into the bathroom. Instead, he pulled her to the bedside. Ming picked up the phone that was ringing nonstop and smiled. "I thought it was Shun Jilia." "No." Yu Lili leaned over. "Then who is it?" "Yi Qianqian." He threw the phone to Yu Lili. Yu Lili looked at it and saw that it was indeed Yi Qianqian. She picked up the phone and heard Yi Qianqian's heavy sigh. "Hello, Qianqian. Lili, my life is so hard." Yi Qianqian's voice was bitter, and she immediately started to complain. From Yi Yuyu's injury, she kept complaining about Shun Luo and the Shun family. Finally, she asked Yu Lili to help her ask for leave so that she could take care of her sister. Only then did Yu Lili hang up. In the bathroom, Ming had finished filling the tub. As he unbuttoned his shirt, he walked over to Yu Lili. Yu Lili had just hung up the phone when she felt a slight weight on her body. Ming reached across her chest and held her waist. He gently kissed her ear and said, "It's time to take a bath." Yu Lili's ear was tickled. She slightly moved away and said, "You have to let me go." Ming didn't want to let go. Looking at her petite body, he felt a little regret. If his hand hadn't been injured, it would have been best to carry her into the bathroom and help her take off her clothes and put her in the water. However, he only had one hand now, so he couldn't carry it at all. He could only loosen his grip, his gaze lingering on her body. "You've grown longer." When Yu Lili heard that, she subconsciously touched the hair beside her ear. Just as Yu Lili was about to speak, her phone rang again. This time, it was Shun Jilia. Ming clearly saw the name on it and raised his eyebrows slightly. When Yu Lili saw the phone, she was in no hurry to move. She sat on the bed and answered the call. Ming's eyes darkened. He had originally planned to go to the bathroom, but he immediately gave up. He leaned his knee against the side of Yu Lili's body and lowered his body. With one hand, he pushed Yu Lili onto the bed. At the same time, the phone had been connected, and the person on the other side of the line could hear it clearly. Yu Lili immediately covered her mouth and glared at him. Ming acted as if he hadn't seen it and muttered to himself, "Is it Shun Jilia? Take it. We'll continue later." Yu Lili stretched out her leg and kicked him, feeling even more embarrassed and annoyed. Chapter 1249. Shun Juliet was silent for a moment before he asked, Lily, are you with Oming? When Lily was about to speak, Oming suddenly pressed down on her. His big hand reached in her coat and lifted her clothes. This guy is doing it on purpose. Lily held her clothes tightly and stared at him as she answered Shun Juliet. Yes, I just returned to the hotel. Shun Juliet felt a sense of crisis and quickly asked, Have you returned to the hotel? In Oming's room or yours? I'll go find you. Lily's hands are pressing down too hard. He couldn't lift her clothes at all, so he decided not to deal with her clothes. He reached out to her thighs and gently caressed them. Lily slapped his hand hard and lifted her foot to kick it. She replied patiently, We found a hotel near where Uncle One is. We'll go there tomorrow to pick up our luggage. You're staying together? Shun Juliet heard the subtle sound and felt even more uneasy. He said, Lily, since you've broken up, you should make a clean break. Return Oming to Uncle One, and then come back here. Grandma misses you very much. There's another very important thing that Grandma wants to tell you in person. What is it? Old Mrs. Shun actually has something important to tell me. Lily listened, but she was just listening. Every time old Mrs. Shun talked about something important, it would be a trivial matter. After making a fuss about it, there would be no further details. This time should be similar, so Lily didn't take it to heart. It's very important. When you come back, I'll let Grandma tell you. Shun Juliet's voice was serious. It didn't sound like a joke or a lie. Lily listened, but Oming had already changed his strategy. He directly touched her neck with one hand and gently pressed down. His lips fell on her face. She didn't know whether it was intentional or not, but the place where he kissed made a slight sound. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to pass through the phone. Let's talk about it tomorrow. It's so late now. It's not good. Oming's voice sounded very close to the phone. Just as she was about to say something, Oming turned her face around with one hand and kissed her on the lips. Shocked, Lily opened her mouth to speak, but Oming's tongue easily slipped in and gently teased her. Their tongues intertwined, emitting a soft, sizzling sound. Lily tried to push him away but failed. Holding the phone in her hand, her heart was beating fast. Oming's hand moved down and pinched her soft and plump breasts. He squinted at the phone, which was still in the middle of call. He deliberately lowered his voice and said, Is the call over? Go away. Lily pushed his face away, but he had no intention of leaving. He got a little closer and said, Are you done? I'm still waiting for you to help me bathe. Could this guy be any more deliberate? Lily didn't know what to do with him. In a low voice, she said, Go away first. I'm on the phone. I'll help you wash it later. Chapter 1250. All right. Get out. Lily gritted her teeth and took his hand away. However, such an action seemed to have fueled his interest even more. Instead, the giant hand moved even faster. Shun Juliet listened to the movement and was silent for a moment. What are you doing? He asked. He's drinking water by the side. I'm on the phone. I see. Shun Juliet felt a little relieved. I'll pick you up. Which hotel are you staying at? No, I'll sleep here. Oming's eyes can't move, so I'll take care of him here. Don't worry, I got a double bedroom. Oming squinted at the 1.8-meter-long bed and looked at Lily with a faint smile. Lily looked straight ahead and said, I'll go over there tomorrow. You should rest early. I have to help Oming take a bath. It's not convenient for you. You're a girl. I've been with Oming for many years. It's okay to help him take a bath. Lily pretended not to understand Shun Juliet's concerns. I'm hanging up. Wait. Shun Juliet shouted. Lily paused. When she was about to put the phone back to her ear, Oming pulled her over. After hanging up, he threw the phone aside. He hasn't finished yet. Lily kicked him. Her tone was inadvertently coquettish. However, when he heard the voice, Oming's eyes darkened, and he pulled down the pants that he had just peeled off halfway. Lily pulled her pants up and kicked him again. She said angrily, Go away. Take a bath. Oming pulled her up and said, I'll help you take off your clothes. No, one by one. I'll help you wash first, and then I'll wash myself. Lily pulled her pants up and put them on. When she stood up, she heard the phone ring again. It was Shun Julia again. Lily answered the phone. Hello. Be careful. Although Ming can't see, he's still a man. Don't let him bully you. Hearing this, Lily felt even more guilty. When she was about to say something, she looked up and saw the strange look in Ming's eyes. Okay, go to bed early. Good night. Lily said goodbye. After a few seconds, she hung up. What did he say? Ming leaned over and asked in a low voice. You told me to be careful of you, you big pervert. She pushed him away again and stomped toward the bathroom. Ming raised his eyebrows and hugged her from behind. He smiled and said, Is that so? Is he so worried about me? I'm worried about you too. Ming nodded in agreement and said, You're right to worry about me. Come, let's go in. Go. Help me take off my clothes. Ming pulled her hand and put it on his clothes. I can't take my hands off. Lily looked at him suspiciously. When she saw his indifferent and serious look, she reached out and took off his clothes one by one. His shirt was taken off. Lily tugged at him and said, Come in. But Ming was still not satisfied. He said, Pants. Lily then turned around and reluctantly helped him take off his clothes. But as soon as she got closer, she clearly noticed that he was not calm. Lily blushed. She looked up and saw that Ming was still pretending to be human. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.